and it'll be an easy lock. There's no way that an outsider could potentially coast to an easy victory, let alone 10, if not 10 plus points over Janet Mills in the primary, right? There's no shot. They were wrong. Anyway, we're going to keep... No one expects the Jihad Inquisition? Yeah. I said, how about both sides on the Holy Crusades? You know what I mean? Rate the Room's Patel chair. It's very cozy. Very, very cozy. All right, well, let's get into it. Right in. There's a lot going on in the world, so obviously we must cover it all, and we must get right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, our first story of today, breaking news, is taking us to Maine. Many people are asking, are you sore from last night's workout? No. My soreness comes delayed. It'll probably kick in tonight or perhaps tomorrow. In any case, breaking news, Mills Mafia is down. Janet Mills, Pills Mafia, the Pill Mill, Janet Series. Unfortunately, we have lost the candidate that we put all of our effort into, the candidate that we knew had not been a four-tour machine gunner, Marine Corps grunt, Janet Mills, who, of course, was the ethical choice in this race for all the blue sky liberals and for all the ultra-left Maoist third worldists who actually don't even live in the United States of America in many instances, or certainly think voting is the most reactionary, counter-revolutionary thing you can do. The candidate for all of those people in the Democratic primary for the Senate seat that is currently occupied by Susan Collins was Janet Mills. But unfortunately, Janet Mills is down. Let's take a look.
Good morning. We thank you for joining us. We are interrupting your regularly scheduled programming for some major breaking news in Commitment 2026. We're just learning moments ago, Governor Mills announcing that she is suspending her campaign for U.S. Senate after campaigning for the last 6 months.
Yeah, and she's citing financial resources here. She says she had the drive and the compassion and the commitment and the experience, she says, to continue on, but she doesn't have what political campaigns require, the financial resources. That's why she's saying she made the difficult decision to suspend her campaign. This is new to our newsroom, too. We have not yet heard anything from any other campaign regarding her dropout, but just getting into this into our newsroom in the last 2 minutes.
That's right. Yeah, we're just learning about this. We are reaching out in real time right now to the Graham Platner campaign, as well as the Susan Collins campaign, for comment on this. This was not an announcement, at least that most political observers were anticipating would come today. These two had not met on a debate stage. The governor, of course, was actively campaigning. She was holding a series of events at different locations and
Yeah, it wasn't a lack of funds. Let's be real. I mean, that would be an even more devastating story, ironically enough, because that would imply that the DSCC has no motion whatsoever, and they don't have the coffers to go against a disruptor that is an outsider in every way, shape, and form. That was initially backed by the independent senator from Vermont, Bernard Sanders. So the idea that, like, the Democratic Party can't even cast aside or can't even secure funds to oppose a primary challenger coming from their left flank with totally independent funding is an even worse story, if we're being real, than the fact that Janet Mills, as the governor of the state, did not have enough genuine enthusiasm backing her campaign. And that's precisely what took place here. Now, the Janet Mills Graham Platner race is an unbelievably important primary, as you guys know. I've covered it extensively. I've talked about it extensively. The reason why it's an unbelievably important primary is because it's one of the few instances where the centrist, corporate-backed Democratic Party power center totally underestimated the opposition and thought, oh, we'll just front load a lot of AIPAC dollars to this decrepit, old, governor of the state and it'll be an easy lock. There's no way that an outsider could potentially coast to an easy victory, let alone 10, if not 10 plus points over Janet Mills in the primary, right? There's no shot. They were wrong. They were wrong. They were unbelievably wrong, as a matter of fact. Graham Platner is now secured the primary victory for the Democratic Party, so now he can focus on unseating Susan Collins. So here's the thing. This is a very important story for multiple reasons, right? As I said, this shows that a lot of the white power center, I shouldn't say power center, white power like that, block in this party, even in purple states like Maine, or even in states that will be inevitably voting for a Republican seat, to unseat and flip a Republican seat with Susan Collins, are no longer abiding by the old standard of electability favoring moderates arguments. They no longer believe that you have to pivot to the center. They no longer have the power centers of the party no longer have the stranglehold, the vice grip that they have had over some of the most active voters in the party. This is a huge deal because the primaries are what dictate the future of the Democratic Party, and the general is what dictates the future of the country. But in many respects, for far too long, we on the left flank have not been active in these primaries, right? With some exceptions, some notable exceptions like Bernard Sanders. But we have not been active in the Democratic Party's primary systems all around the country. And on top of that, it's been a very hard hill to climb for many outsider candidates, left flank candidates, because the establishment has been able to control the electability arguments over and over again in perpetuity, constantly claiming the left flank candidates are not electable. You mustn't vote for them. You must vote for who we tell you to vote for. And that's what the centrists have been able to accomplish over and over again all around the country, lying to the base of support, claiming that the best possible candidate to vote for is the one that we tell you is most likely to defeat the Republicans. The centrist establishment Democrats have been able to basically educate their voter base into a pliant base of support for centrist Democrats, constantly telling them you have to vote like a DNC consultant and not vote for who you think is the best possible candidate. Vote for who you associate with closely. Okay? They've been able to successfully put the fear of God in many Democratic Party primary voters and have been able to successfully teach them to vote for not who you think is the best, but vote for who you think others consider to be the most electable. But of course, after defeat after defeat after defeat, specifically with Kamala Harris, against the same incompetent fascist once again, Donald Trump, many in the Democratic Party realized perhaps that this method was bullshit. They realized it. So many people said, perhaps Bernie was right. We were wrong. That in 2016, Bernie could have defeated Donald Trump. In 2020, Bernie would have been a better candidate than Joe Biden. And here we are. Many former Clinton heads that have been lifelong Democratic Party boosters, donors, supporters, have realized that Graham Platner is a far more viable option, okay? A far better choice to vote for. So we're doing away with the old method of operating with what some people like to call pundit brain. We're doing away with the old method of not voting for who we want, but voting for who we think others would likely vote for. And that's what Graham Platner has demonstrated. Now, of course, the job is not done, right? Don't be so callous as to assume that Graham Platner will coast off into an easy victory. The Republican Party will probably do everything in its power to make sure Susan Collins remains in that seat, okay? Having said that, however, this is a day of victory.
Speaking with voters, it comes after as well recent polls. There were at least a few of them which showed that Graham Platner, the political newcomer here in Maine, that he was generating more support, at least according to those polls, than the governor was.
Yeah, and the statement that came into our newsroom too, the governor basically just expressing a lot of gratitude for Maine. She said in her campaign she recently traveled all the way to the north of the state, met to Madawaska, down to York, across the state, saying that she is extremely grateful to the people of Maine, saying, I love you. I will continue to fight for you relentlessly as governor. And for the next 8 months, she'll work hard to stand up for what's right and defend the Constitution and preserve our democracy. So again, if you are just joining us, we are bringing you breaking news that Governor Janet Mills has dropped out of the race for U.S. Senate seat. She was scheduled to have a debate here with us next week with Graham Platner and the other candidates for Senate too. So obviously she will not face him on a debate stage.
Graham Platner has been holding events in many corners of the state, and through his reporting and our coverage of events like these, he has been drawing significant crowds to events like that. Governor Mills has had more controlled environments, more intimate settings with her supporters in the process of this campaign. She was viewed by many as the more establishment candidate. She was recruited to run and had the support of Senate leaders like Chuck Schumer, as Graham Platner has not received.
This is a huge deal. Like, this is a huge deal. Don't let anybody act as though this is not a huge deal. Even in my most skeptical moments with Graham Platner, looking at his background, looking at what he's done, what did I keep telling you? That the silver lining here is the fact that regardless of the red flags that he has, from my estimation, it's very clear that the Maine base it does not care about those things. As a matter of fact, they might even see it as a benefit, the fact that he was a machine gunner and things like that. Give him an opportunity, give him a lot more legitimacy, a lot more credibility to speak on issues such as war. Many of you said his sentiments, his anti-war sentiments are not to your liking because many of you refuse to grade politicians on a curve, and that's obviously always going to lead you into disappointment. But the reality of the matter is, as I said over and over and over again, that these sorts of things that in the past, the things that he was advocating for, the things that he's still advocating for, like Medicare for all, saying that he's anti-Israel from the start, by Bernie Sanders, off the rip, like these were all early green flags for the Bernie-crat wing, for the left flank candidacies that are propping up in primaries all around the country. So every single victory of this sort is going to be good, okay?
Same establishment Washington, D.C. support, that at least that's the way that a lot of political insiders perceive it.
And as Sari said, we have reached out to Graham Platner's campaign. We are currently reaching out to Senator Susan Collins' campaign as well for reaction to this news. We will be sure to join you on air and online as we get updates, and we'll be sure to continue to update you with that information as well, too.
Your reaction to the Mills news?
Here's Susan Collins, who Graham Platner is obviously running against in the general. Susan Collins is Madam I'm Concerned. Many of you know her by her name, I'm Concerned, or Mrs. Concerning. Susan Collins is a moderate Republican, which means nothing, really. It just means that she just keeps saying, oh, I'm very concerned. Whenever Trump is like, I'm going to set up I'm going to set off all of our nuclear arsenal and, I don't know, wipe out Estonia off the map. People will go to Susan Collins and be like, ma'am, what do you feel? How do you feel about this? And she'll say, I'm concerned. Okay. No matter how insane Donald Trump gets, she will always say, look, I'm very concerned, but I'm going to have to vote for whatever Trump is doing. Oh, is he wiping off Estonia? Is he wiping Estonia off the map with nuclear arms? I'm concerned, but I will probably vote for it. Okay? Yeah, she's like the EU of senators. She's just concerned, but stands in line with the party. Yes. Madam, I'm sure he's learned his lesson. That's another one. And Susan Collins has obviously drawn enough ire from the president as well and the MAGA base as well for even demonstrating concern whenever Donald Trump says or does something unbelievably stupid, even if she's a loyal servant of the party when push comes to shove. So she's in this unique predicament and most likely will lose her seat. This is a Republican seat, so this will be a flip. And the reason why that's very important is because Maine, I guess you could consider it maybe a purplish state, but it's a red seat, right? It's a Republican seat that will be luckily flipped blue. And what's really interesting about that is that this goes against all of the previous established commentariat talking points. Zohran Mamdani is only popular in a place like New York where everyone is a woke libtard homosexual with a septum ring and a degree in queer biology. No one with Zohran's politics could ever win in a red state. No one with Zohran's politics could ever win in a purple state. Talk to me when someone with Zohran Mamdani's politics ends up winning a red seat. This is what the reasoning has always been from centrist Democrats, claiming that people like AOC, people like Zohran Mamdani, people like Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib can only win in deep blue areas. Okay? Deep blue areas where the electorate resembles a gender queer English major that is getting an education in a liberal arts college with 150 other people. Okay? That's not the case. It turns out 65-year-old white ladies and 75-year-old white guys fucking love what Graham Platner has been serving. Let's take a look at one of these rooms that he's filled. And these are rooms that he has filled all around the state, mind you. Graham Platner famously has traveled up and down the state of Maine, going into towns with like 100 people and selling out 1,000-person arenas. He has this incredible capability, walking like a chud and thinking like a woke, where he's capable of filling up rooms and arenas in towns where there's just more people attending his speeches than there are people in the fucking town. Turns out people love a progressive mind and a MAGA body, okay? Turns out people are demanding a progressive mind and a MAGA body, demanding a person who walks like a chud but thinks like a woke, walks like a chud but talks like a woke, whatever you want to call it, okay? Vinny DeBozo says, does no one else find it a bit nuts that Platner is able to command waves of 65-plus-year-old whites to the rallies where he talks about putting Alito and Thomas in jail and passing Medicare for all by getting rid of the filibuster? Yeah. Like, this is not a college campus in an urban area. This is Maine 2. Now, people will still do their very best to confirm their priors, okay? You're going to see a big race by the Matt Iglesias constituency, the commentariat that is getting paid by billionaires, millionaires, and the corporate lobbyists to constantly fucking feed that slop over and over again. The idea that, you see, this victory actually doesn't do anything. If anything, it confirms my priors. That's what they're going to say. I'm sure they've already started to say this, and we'll take a look at what they have to say in a moment. But let's get back to Susan Collins. Madam Concerning.
I'm sure this was a very difficult decision for Governor Mills, and I wish her well. She has devoted her life to public service in the state of Maine in many different capacities. She has served the people of our state, and I'm sure this was a hard decision for her.
Will Platner be
easier to beat in your view?
I'm not going to get into the November election at this point. This is the governor's day, and I think the focus should be on her and her wanting to give her message to the people of Maine.
A lot of Democrats believe that he has the energy on the left. Does he bring a lot more energy than she would have?
I'm not going to get into playing pundit in this race. This is the governor's decision. I'm sure it was very difficult. She spent decades in public service. She served as a district attorney, as the attorney general, and as a two-term governor of the state of Maine. We have worked well together in the past, and I'm sure we'll continue to work together for the remainder of her time in office.
What's your strategy going forward? Thank you.
Do you think Schumer misled the electorate in Maine?
Governor Mills has dedicated her career to this beautiful state. We're all eternally grateful for her service to the state of Maine as governor and her lifelong career serving Mainers as attorney general, as district attorney, and in the legislature. We both got into this race because we knew how critical it is to defeat Susan Collins. And her decision today reflects a commitment to that project. I look forward to working closely with her between now and November to do just that, to defeat Susan Collins and turn this seat blue again. The race has never been about me or really about one person. It's about a movement of working Mainers who are fed up with being robbed by billionaires and the politicians who own them.
So Graham cooks again, obviously, walk like a chud, think like a woke. But, of course, Graham Platner does the graceful thing, the gracious thing. Okay, what is this? Platner looks different in this picture. Graham Platner's Arm Mamdani and Hasan are officially the future of the Democratic Party. These are written in a way where I can't even tell if this is like a pro piece or an anti piece. But given the overwhelming majority of the unbelievable, like an unbelievable barrage of hit pieces, I suspect that this is just, probably another one of those things that's like cautioning the Democrats for making a big mistake. There's a joke in there. I just don't get it.
We are now taking back our power. That is what this campaign is. We will defeat Susan Collins. We will go to Washington and we will start tearing down the system that for too long has forgotten and written off the people who make Maine and this country what it is. People have said this campaign came out of nowhere, but those people don't know Maine. This movement came out of a lot of somewheres, from working waterfronts that have worked far too long, only to be pushed to the brink.
Still following, by the way, Lamau W chat. Oh my God, this is the streamer from yesterday, the one that has the. I'm sorry that you have insane parasocial stalkers that you have to deal with that are telling you to unfollow me. That's no love lost if you were to lean into this, but you have it 1,000 times worse than I do. I'm all good. I mean, yeah, I eat it from every end, If unfollowing gets you harassed less, definitely do it, but appreciate you being here. Yeah. All right, let's continue with the Graham Platner speech.
The closest hospital is now hours away. For workers who pay more.
You were going to interview him after the Kirk debate? Yeah, we were supposed to do a Maine thing together after the Charlie Kirk debate. Obviously that fell apart. I'm happy that he's cooking right now.
Taxes than billionaires. For loggers who are just one mill closure away from bankruptcy. And for young people who want a home to call their own. And for seniors who are ready to demand the dignity that they deserve.
Yeah, what happened? Well, I had to cancel my public appearances for at least a couple weeks, if you recall. Because the guy who I was supposed to debate publicly in a public setting got publicly killed after being shot in the fucking neck,
For decades, this system has taken, piece by piece, store by store, hospital by hospital, shore by shore, town by town. They have taken from us. And they took so much that they began to think that we didn't exist at all. But they don't know Maine. They don't know the power that we have here. And we are taking back what is ours. Everyone who's come here today to endorse me, it is an absolute honor to have you here. I very much recognize that the project that we are engaged in, this is just a continuation of work that has happened for a very, very long time. And so to everyone who's here, I really want to say thank you very much for all your work, all of these years, building the foundation that we all get to build on now, to build a state and to build a country that represents the people who build it. Thank you.
Are you going to interview Talrico? Maybe. I like to do baits, by the way. So I want to cover one of the little baits that I did earlier on my way on the train to Philadelphia. Okay, this has predictably alarmed a lot of people. What is to be done by Vladimir Ilyich Lenin? Clearly, when you take a photo of yourself staring out the window while holding a fucking book, like it's on purpose. Okay. It's so funny that people are pointing to this to be like, whoa, he's not actually reading. You're pretending to read. It's like, yeah, dude, that's the fucking joke. You're an idiot. Okay. Not only that, but also incredible bait post that alarmed everyone from Michael Rappaport. Dickhead is fake reading. You poser clown, bro. Take a pic of me while I fake read, bro. Dickhead. To pretending to read again so you can keep up with the socialist larp while you actively sheepdog actual well-intentioned socialists into supporting the Gaza genocide party? I forget. Please remind me. What chapter does Lenin talk about the need to tail the establishment party? Okay? And it's really funny because, like, he then highlights this. Who could have seen this coming? Everyone. We kept yelling about this. I think it's time for the liberals who scream at the left to bury the hatchet and actively reconstruct the Democratic Party to be a real opposition party with a bold vision of change. And then notice the part he did not highlight, which says, or build a real alternative. Like, buddy, it's right there. It's right there. The parts that you didn't highlight also straight up explain that if the alternative is not there within the ranks of the Democratic Party, which is currently the only viable electoral option, right, and should be utilized to at least spread class consciousness, broad awareness, political education, and also lean into or create some kind of revolutionary momentum in a country that is lacking of class consciousness, it's right there. Okay? First time the Dems are playing with the new rules Republicans abuse all the time, and corporate media stooges scream about the rules. This is a great move, and I hope it inspires Democrats to fight back even harder. Yeah. And then it's a compilation of all of the DSA candidates that I work with. Like, virtually all of these guys are DSA. Virtually all of them, with some exceptions. But the overwhelming majority are DSA. Go outside. Oh, you're talking about the I assume you're responding to this guy. I love these people, okay? I love my mentally ill communist LARPers. You are my favorite type of poster on Twitter. Keep posting that shit, okay? That's what I say to you. To all the communist LARPers in my fucking replies, keep posting that shit, big dog. I love it. I personally love it. On the one hand, for the revolutionary communists of America, for the ACP guys, I obviously am a sheepdog of the bourgeois, neoliberal, corporate-backed Democratic Party, and I'm actually a social fascist. And for all of the actual social fascists, I am an authoritarian Marxist-Leninist, okay? Who is not pragmatic at all, who doesn't understand how to fight Republicans, who doesn't care about fighting fascism at all, and wants to rebuild America in his own vision. Shannon Watts, of course, author of New York Times bestseller Fired Up, an organizer who started off as, one of those Moms for America, not Moms for America, but like a anti-gun violence activist who then now has become the number one supporter of Israel for some weird reason. She went from being anti-gun control and anti-school shooting to being pro-school shooting as long as it's in Gaza or if it's in Lebanon. or if it's in Iran, she's totally on board with those kinds of school shootings, just not on board with school shootings happening in the United States of America. Shannon Watts says, Democrats trying to normalize Piker are making a mistake. He's not just a cool, edgy guy who wants universal health care, nor is he disliked simply because he speaks up for Palestinians, as his supporters would claim. The core problem with Hasan Piker is that he is, at most, basic level, an ideological authoritarian. He promotes violence and repression whenever that violence and repression have a socialist lean. Okay? Now, of course, the reality of the matter is, if I was pro-Israel, she wouldn't be actively highlighting hit pieces, and these hit pieces would not even be written at all. But, you know, keep it up. Keep up the hit pieces. I'm sure one day it'll work. Party centrists are pivoting from Hasan as Hamas to Piker as Putin. Just an entrenched, corrupt network protecting their racket from an outsider threat using whatever rhetorical weaponry they think will preserve their power. Yeah. Jeremiah Johns has written the best critique of Hasan Piker I've ever read. This is really about democracy versus authoritarianism. And if someone has the consistency to oppose any boot on your neck, whether it was made in a socialist or capitalist factory, Piker doesn't. Hasan Piker is an authoritarian, says Jonathan Chait. So is Netanyahu. If liberal Zionists want to survive, we must fight both. It's very funny. I love it personally. I know a lot of people are like, how do you deal with this? How do you keep up with this? To them, I say, there's not really much you can do. You just got to keep pushing, okay? It is what it is. Joe Biden both accused China of genocide, then kept boasting about his relationship with Xi. Trump let China have some of our most advanced chips. I don't get why Hasan Piker is the issue with China. Our own government practices appeasement. I said I'm doing it foreigner style. In some ways, that's the case. But the reality of the matter is, it's because they are... Are your dumbass ops trying to call you pro-autocracy because every seat of power is definitionally authoritarian? Yeah. Yeah. Judge me by my enemies. Your boos mean nothing. When I've seen what makes you cheer, that's how it goes. Okay? The people who eat Netanyahu's dick and have consistently done so for the past 2.5 years, for people who have consistently defended Israel, for them to turn around and be like, Hasan is the real danger. He's the real authoritarian. Okay, well, sucks to suck. Would love to see the Venn diagram of pro-genocide, anti-Piker camps. Here is Representative Josh Gottheimer. Hatred is hatred, period. It doesn't matter whether it comes from the far right or the far left. Very influential voices like Hasan Piker and Candace Owens spread hate, promote terrorism, all this good stuff. Right? Yeah. Authoritarianism is when you demand that mega corporations don't slaughter people with its routine pollution campaigns at the behest of profit. You know, that's authoritarianism. Unbelievable levels of authoritarianism. You're an authoritarian if you think we should put people ahead of the interest of profit. That is what the authoritarianism is. That is what their fear is. Authoritarianism is when you say, hey, maybe we should actually punish and hold accountable countries that have been murdering school children in their schools. You know, that's probably something that we should do if we're honest, if we're actually humanitarian in the way that we promote ourselves and the way that we see ourselves, right? Authoritarianism. Yeah. Not gaming is authoritarianism. I am a fascist in that regard. You're right. For the gaming frogs. My MAGA dad will actively say he doesn't want to live in a democracy anymore to random people he meets, and they usually agree in rural Western PA. He says he wants the government to run like a business. Oh my God. It's classic Republican. Classic Republican tropes here. We got to run this government like a business. So, but yeah, corporate media has been going crazy mode. 17 articles written. The New York Sun, House bill calls out Hasan Piker and Candace Owens for fueling hatred of Jews. National Review, micro-looting, still talking about that. National Review is still... Elite leftist influencers think political violence is cool now, from the Wall Street Journal. Sky News Australia. Hasan Piker tells Sky News Rita Wallah...
It's time for Lefties.
Oh my God, wait, what the fuck? Hasan Piker tells Sky News Rita Panahi to focus on dingoes and wallabies. Millionaire Marxist clashes with Sky News host. Wait, why is she posting that? It's just a self-own. That makes no damn sense. And then is she going to have Josh Hammer on again? Usually that's what they do. Or no, let's go. Clearly you're a theocrat, not authoritarian, okay? Jerusalem Post, House to consider bipartisan resolution condemning the spread of anti-Semitism. Daily Wire, New York Post, Fox News. Okay. Jewish Insider wrote one, but it didn't pick up. There's a lot. It's all over. The New York Times didn't write one, which is crazy. Dershowitz from the Christian Broadcasting Network. I got banned completely from the New York Times. Now they're platforming Hasan Piker. I didn't see this one. That's funny. The free press, culture that bred Cole Allen, all this shit. JTA, Times of Israel. Holy fuck, Times of Israel's written a lot. Forward, Newsweek, Vox, Manhattan Institute, Jewish Chronicles, Politico, all this good stuff. All right, anyway. Someone buy your domain is redirected to a smear site. You can fight this with lawyers. Okay, dude, it's fine. It is what it is. All right. So, you know, that's where we're at in the smear, on the smear side. But I did find it very funny, you know, because the GOP is sending him via sealed train to Maine to undermine the Democrats. And then this guy goes, should have been photographed performatively reading this. Would have been both funnier and confused a lot of people. Why would it confuse people? Why would this confuse people? Like, it's seemingly confusing to you what I'm doing there, which is, you know, deliberate. It's by design. This would be also in line with my beliefs. I like that Tyler Austin Harper, who acts as though he understands like fundamental Leninist critique, and then acts as though I would be one of the people being called out in left-wing communism and infantile disorder. It's very, very stupid. He doesn't have nearly the sense of humor, self-awareness, or willingness to make fun of himself to ever do something actually funny like this. Case in point. No, you fucking idiot. It doesn't make sense because it would be in line with this. It would be the exact same thing. Oh, God, whatever, dude. It's just people throwing Marxist terminology around without understanding what it means, without understanding the nuances and the different the different ideological tendencies as well. A little chuggy Lamau. I mean, it is. It's the whole point. Anyway, the post was expert bait. The LeBron memes have me dying. Yeah. Oh no, I'm sleeping in the bed I made. DSA endorses Chris Rabb. Yeah, Democratic Socialists of America has endorsed Chris Rabb. DSA has only made 2 national endorsements in 2026. Obviously, we'll be hanging out with Chris Rabb later today. Read Theory on stream. You want to know what's fun? Jordan Theory. Jordan _Theory says, read Theory on stream. Ironic because I have done that. And specifically, left communism and infantile disorder. That's literally a thing that I have read on stream. Given that I have been live, given that I have more than 21,000 hours, okay? Given that I have more than 21,000 hours on this fucking broadcast, everything that people always say, why don't you do this? I most likely have done, okay? Just Google it first. Search for it, and you will find it, okay? I promise you. I missed the weather report at the top of the broadcast. Is it sunny in Philadelphia? Yes, that's why my transition lenses are lighting up, if you haven't noticed. Yeah, it's like saying, Hasan, I bet you would never talk about 9/11 on stream, you know? Anyway, let's see. Graham Platner. Mehdi Hasan challenges Graham Platner on his tattoo and more. Let's take a look. Now that Graham Platner is the it boy of the day, let's take a look at what Graham Platner is saying, what Graham Platner has done so far, how he has defended himself. This surely will not spark some unbelievably unproductive discourse in this community. Of all communities, let's take a look.
With Israel.
Shameful. What has happened in Gaza, it's the moral question of our time, and we failed it miserably. We need to get money out of politics. The cost of war is something I have seen up front. I have seen friends die.
How do you avoid the John Fetterman vibes?
That man is the bane of my existence. It is something that's been fascinating for me in this entire experience, is realizing just how many people who run for office don't actually have any deeper political beliefs.
When exactly did you find out that the tattoo on your chest could be a Nazi tattoo or seen as one?
I had it for 17 years. I went through 2 security clearances. Never came up.
Is there other stuff out there that's going to come out?
Yeah, of course. Of course it never came up. They were like, oh, you're going to get promoted for having that tattoo.
Graham Platner came out of nowhere an oyster farmer from Maine running to unseat veteran Republican Senator Susan Collins in the midterm elections this fall. Platner, who formerly served with the Marines and the Army with deployment in Iraq and Afghanistan, is running a very progressive anti-war campaign opposing Trump's war in Iran and speaking out about Israel's genocide in Gaza. He's leading in the polls against his big-name Democratic opponent in the June 9th primary, Governor Janet Mills. But Platner's campaign is not without controversy. He joins me now to unpack it all. Welcome to Mehdi Unfiltered, Graham Platner.
Thank you very much, Mehdi. It's a pleasure to be here.
Graham, one of the central debates around your candidacy is the word, and you've heard it a lot, especially from the media, electability. The establishment view is that you are not electable. You are someone who is unorthodox, you have no experience, you have a lot of baggage, and that Janet Mills, the governor, who people know, she's the safe bet. Electability.
Well, I think that is a take that comes from people who are really trying to protect their interests and protect the system that they're working within. In their version of politics, sure, but their version of politics has been losing for quite some time. I mean, the zeitgeist here in Maine is pretty clear. People do not want establishment politicians. People do not want to continue doing the exact same thing we've done for years, and people don't want to run the exact same kind of playbook that is lost to Susan Collins over and over and over again. We are doing something entirely different, and it is ironic to me that the people who are crowing about electability are the same folks who tend to take polls seriously. But we are at now something like 12 or 13 consecutive polls that have me winning the primary by substantial margins and winning the general by significantly higher margins than the sitting governor would against Susan Collins. And so I think there has just been a shift in what politics is in this country, and a lot of the people in places of political power, the people who think that they have experience, the ground has shifted beneath them, and they don't really know how to react.
Daddy, come back? No, this is good. Having a little bit of unfiltered, uninterrupted Graham Platner in this community will be good.
There's a very fair point about the polls. Your critics, though, would say, well...
March sent you a pic, by the way. What is this? Oh my fucking wait, what the hell? This is not a normal Philadelphia cheesesteak, okay? This is above and beyond, it seems. Oh my God, dude, what the fuck? That shit looks unbelievable. Whoo, god damn, that shit looks mint.
We have a Republican president who was elected in 2016 with zero executive or legislative experience. He didn't know anything about government. He had never been in public life. He was a guy from reality TV and Home Alone 2. Why should Democrats follow that path? You are an oyster fisherman, a Marine vet, which is great. But what do you know about legislating? What do you know about foreign policy, they might say?
Well, I would say, one, it's not the same path because I have an immense amount of experience dealing with American foreign policy firsthand.
Yes.
I have an immense amount of experience with the challenges of returning home from the failures of that foreign policy. But I also have a lot of experience in re-engaging with my community and building a small business and being successful materially down here in the real world. I think that one of our problems is we have a lot of people who think that experience comes from being part of the political system that has brought us to this moment. But that politics that brought us here, that's the problem. Having experience in building the system that allows billionaires to consolidate the wealth that they've consolidated, that's allowed for a system that has created essentially unlivable conditions for a lot of working people in this country, where things like housing and healthcare and the general affordability of goods and services goes through the roof. I have experience with that, I don't have experience with that. I have experience with the outcomes of that kind of politics. And I think what we really need are people from the normal world who understand that policy begets real material things for people. And that is an experience that we have lost in many places in the halls of power. And I think it's one of the reasons why this campaign is so successful, is many Americans, certainly many Mainers, believe that that's exactly the kind of experience that's going to get us into a better future.
That's undeniably true that politics and Congress does not reflect the real world or real people and working people. And clearly you've been popular because of that. I'm not going to pretend I don't share your politics. I do, everyone knows that. When I watch your race though, forgive me, I cannot forget the John Fetterman race. John Fetterman was someone I supported in his primary. I supported him in the general. When he was being attacked by Republicans after his health issues, after his stroke, I defended him. And now you look at John Fetterman, and he's a genocidal, warmongering, Trump-loving Senate Democrat, refuses to go against the filibuster and all sorts of other things he promised to be a vote on. And of course, he wasn't just popular because he was a progressive. He was seen...
Yeah, everyone's got that John Fetterman. John Fetterman got a stroke, and it caused him to become the most pro-Israel senator. It caused him to become the most right-wing, one of the most right-wing senators in Congress. But it also basically stroked out half of the fucking left, where no one can look at a guy who codes as a chud and ever take them seriously ever again. Everyone is constantly terrified. There's this like genuine trauma. It wasn't just a head trauma that John Fetterman got. It was a head trauma that he delivered to like damn near the entirety of the electoralist left, where they're all like, no, every single guy is John Fetterman. Everyone is John Fetterman. I say it's a trauma response because you're not thinking clearly when you make these assessments, okay? John Fetterman is a unique once-in-a-lifetime ordeal, okay? He got hit with the CIA stroke gun that makes you pro-Israel. More pro-Israel than he already was. He got hit with the CIA stroke gun that makes you the most right-wing senator in the country. It's a very different situation. It's a totally a stroke of luck or misfortune, whichever way you put it.
As an ordinary person too, he was, he wore a hoodie. I notice you're wearing a hoodie right now. He wears a hoodie. Yeah, so you must get this, Graham Platner. Like, how do you avoid the John Fetterman vibes? People say, I like Graham Platner, but I hope he doesn't turn into John Fetterman once he's liking this video. Then don't just watch, hit like, share, and
I think this is really on the Senate.
Independent journalism. Elected.
I will just say that man is the bane of my existence. I get asked about this and everything. I will say this, I'm going to wear a suit on the Senate floor.
Okay.
One, that's how you can be on the Senate floor. And if you want to be effective in the Senate,
well said.
You have to be on the floor. Otherwise, I don't know, what's the point? The other thing is, and I think this is really important, much of the story around John Fetterman was a bit of a story. He had been trying to get into politics for quite some time.
Yes.
When you look at his background, for many, it was clear he had political ambitions. I really was just an oyster farmer, and the extent of my political ambitions was being the harbor master in my town of 1,000 people. The reason I'm doing this is I do have a theory of power in which the U.S. Senate has a extremely important function. I think because it's a unique.
Was he asked about Blackwater? I don't know if Mehdi asked him about Blackwater, but let's be real. Plenty of people have already. And the reality of the matter is this is not a part of the calculus at all for Mainers, okay? It's just not. Like, I know you guys desperately want to know. You're like, oh, what the fuck was the deal? And I certainly do too. And I've listened to some of his responses. To give it the fairest of all shakes, the idea, I mean, I find it totally ridiculous to join Blackwater in 2016 of all, of all times, right? Like, it's like long after we know that this is a war crimes factory. And at best, I think, like, if I'm being as charitable as possible, he joins Blackwater, as many people have, after they've done their tours, when they feel like there's no other option for them to make money. For the record, I'm not giving this is not a moral assessment. I'm just telling you what the calculation is, okay? I know that everyone is going to look at what I just said and go, oh, yeah, dude, I'm going to go and join the baby murder factory. I'm not saying it's a good thing, okay? I need you to understand. He joins, he does embassy security, and after like a couple months doing embassy security, he's like, this shit sucks, and he leaves, okay? Somewhere along the line, I think he either got one-shotted by shrooms and Michael Brooks and Majority Report, but somewhere along the line, his mentality changes, and he turns into a somewhat of a radical person with politics that closely resemble ours. Okay, I think that's probably what happened with Graham Platner. The reason why I say that is because if you look closely at his social media activity, specifically his Reddit, you see that transition. He goes from in 2014 when he's like looking at the Hamas raid on an Israeli occupying forces compound, and he's like offering analysis on that. He's not doing that from a place where he's like, no, anti-colonial resistance forces have a right to militarily resist against other militaries. Like, it's totally ridiculous. He's looking at it like a chud. In 2014, when he's like covering that on Reddit, when he's like being critical, when he's like talking about what Hamas did on that IDF base, he's looking at it like a chud. Okay? Yeah, he was just like completely cold, calculated, and analytical in his approach to the effective military campaign effective military operation that Hamas conducted on a IDF base, right? Where did you find that Reddit stuff? It's all over. What do you mean? It's been like the #1 oppo. This guy came out of the gates swinging. Against Israel, saying that he's pro-Medicare for all with a Bernie Sanders endorsement. Okay? Of course there was going to be opposition research. Of course they were going to come after him. He's not like a professional he's not a professional politician. He doesn't have that same pedigree. He's not like normally when you come from a military background, you go through the officers program and then go to Yale, okay, and get a law degree from Yale or an MBA from Harvard, and then you go into Congress. You do a brief stint through the officers program or potentially with the State Department, right? You know, like a CIA affiliated role. Or in the case of J.D. Vance, I think he did. Was he a JAG lawyer or was he? No, that was Ron DeSantis. J.D. Vance was like a Marine Corps press, I think. Right? That's the normal professional career to become a politician. You don't actually go through the process at grunt, multiple tours served, actually in front of the line of fire. Actually holding a machine gun and maybe even doing some heinous things. That's not the normal route, okay? J.D. Vance did, yeah. No, J.D. was combat camera. Exactly, he was press, right? He was Marine Corps press. So that's a poor person. That is, I mean, his background is not necessarily poor, from what I understand. I think he's like upper middle class, but basically, yeah, Fango, this is my fascist DA cousin did reserves and JAG. Exactly. You either do reserves or you go through the officers program. You know, you don't do this route. This route is actually very unique. Even for, you know, politicians that are sympathetic. Oftentimes, like I said, when you are going through this process, you don't do fucking infantry. You're not holding a machine gun and actually firing it or being fired at. Okay? There's a reason they call them ROTC Nazis. Yeah. So just understand that. Okay? But there was an unbelievable oppo dump from the start and it didn't do anything. So we know his background. We know his like ideological ideological changes, his rehabilitation in some respects, right? We know the journey that he went through because it was well documented and it was also spread around like wildfire, right? He was a grunt. He was a machine gunner for the fucking Marine Corps. He's a crayon eater, okay? And somewhere along the line, he had a real change of attitude. It's very clear. Unless you personally think this is the most elaborate ruse from the CIA to deeply embed in leftist communities with the notion that like there would be a broad leftist movement somewhere along the line, right? And that the CIA would have to infiltrate it. And we're thinking like decades ahead. And this guy is the perfect guy to do that with. But then in an effort to like boost his profile as like a real one, they also tarnished his reputation as aggressively as possible. And he withstood one of the most cynical oppo dumps of all time for a fucking primary, as Bronco from Jacobin writes. Reminder that Graham Platner weathered one of the most cynical smear/cancel culture campaigns, which painted him as holding virtually the exact opposite of every view he ever expressed, and by a Dem establishment that 5 minutes earlier was decrying cancel culture, no less. in a manner not dissimilar to what I've also withstood in these past couple of months. Sometimes identical lines of attack, hitting every avenue possible. It didn't work. For his goals, for what he was trying to accomplish, was win the primary in the Senate race in the Democratic Party. It didn't work. Fetterman 2.0 confirmed. I'm going to fucking... I want to get fucking hit with the Fetterman Ray, dude. Holy shit. Sometimes I'm like, maybe it's not so bad. And let's not pretend that a massive amount of the community ate this shit up. Oh, no, they did. But they ate it up leftistly. That's why I'm saying it was a very sophisticated smear campaign. Because if you recall at the time, the Jewish Insider was the first outlet to release the story that Graham Platner was actually affiliated with the IDF, that his brother-in-law was literally like a security analyst that had written about Gaza, that was actually serving and embedded in the IDF. This is real. This is a real thing. Jewish Insider was the one that leaked that story. Jewish Insider was the one that put that story out there. And then every fucking ultra ate that shit up, where they were like, oh, dude, sins of the father. This guy is fucking totally she's a secret agent. It was crazy. And what did I tell you at the time? I was like, look at where this information is coming from. Look who leaked this story. Look who put this story out there. It was the motherfucking Jewish Insider that wrote it, knowing full well that this would go to the right circles. It would circulate in all the right communities, and it did. A lot of people ate that shit up. It's like if the Financial Times or New York Times uncovered you having a supposedly billionaire parent, yeah, neither of which would write a story like that, because it's not true. It is true that he has an IDF relative, like a brother-in-law who's in the IDF. Yeah, his brother-in-law is in the Israeli security establishment. And it wasn't Jewish Insider. It was a random Twitter account highlighted by the Australian. Like, don't lie. Even if I don't care about his brother-in-law. Oh, my fucking God. No, it was the Jewish Insider that wrote about it first. It was the first major media outlet that wrote about that. They are the ones who broke that story. It's literally true. I remember because I saw it unfold in real time. What is this? Oh, shit. The fuck? Anyway. Cock leaked? Yeah. Address this. Oh, this is the Fear and Ampersand collection. Yeah, it's coming out. Mauricio Miranda serving cunt. In any case, getting back to the story at hand, okay? He did. He ate it from every end possible. He ate it from centrist Democrats. He ate it from the pro-Israel newspapers. He was receiving a barrage of attacks. And I'll admit, as far as getting ahead of the controversy with the Totenkopf tattoo, the Podjohns actually helped out big time, where he, instead of waiting for the news to break, he controlled the media cycle on the Totenkopf tattoo. He went on Podjohns and was like, this is the thing that is on my chest. I didn't know it was a Totenkopf Nazi tattoo. I'm covering it immediately. That was actually somewhat brilliant. It's ironic because the Podjohns were also responsible at the time for Elizabeth Warren doing that blood quantum test on whether or not she was actually, indigenous or not, which, was, in my opinion, not their best moment. But this was actually, this was unironically a very solid approach that he had.
Uniquely, it was built to be a place of power for elites, to hold back working class power, but that actually makes it a unique target to build working class power, because the bang for your buck with Senate seats is pretty spectacular when it comes to power versus the funds and the kind of apparatus necessary to win.
I did not believe him at first, but then he said he was something on the wall in Croatia and bought it. Yeah, I mean, if you're getting a tattoo on shore leave in Croatia, the likelihood that is going to be a Nazi tattoo is unbelievably high. It's fucking Croatia. Of course you went to a tattoo parlor and they were like, hey, this is, we're going to give you this tattoo. Most places in the United States of America, most tattoo shops in the United States of America would not have that tattoo. As a matter of fact, they would never tattoo that. As a matter of fact, they would literally offer free coverage of tattoos like that because it's a Nazi tattoo. Tattoo parlors know exactly what the common Nazi tattoos are. Okay? Croatia is the one place where you have an unbelievably high likelihood that the tattoo that you're getting is probably a fucking Nazi tattoo. Anyway, I've covered this stuff extensively. It doesn't fucking matter anymore. I don't know why we're going over it over and over again. But yeah,
I think, standing up against the Trump administration, building a better future, we need loud voices in the Senate who are willing to build power and wield it. Fetterman, really doesn't come from that kind of, I think, one, structural critique, and certainly didn't have, when you look closer, a long track record of being very specific or very, what's the word I'm looking for here? Consistent on his policies. For instance, on Israel, long before that happened, he's supporting the Israeli government.
Yes.
And you can find op-eds I wrote in my local paper long before I ever thought about running for U.S. Senate, condemning the genocide in Gaza. So there are elements of me that I think are much more legitimate when it comes to some from the normal world. Yeah.
I want to delve into Israel in just a moment. Just one other name that's associated with you when people talk about your candidacy. Some people call you the...
Platner lied about his time during Blackwater. He said he never worked for Blackwater. No, he said Blackwater had been disbanded by that point and it was operating under a different name, which is true technically. He's just trying to get off on a technicality. But it's bullshit regardless. Yes, it's a Blackwater. It's what Blackwater became. It's one of the many different security contractors that most veterans go to work for. I think it was, Constellus at that point. Regardless, it doesn't matter. It's still totally worthy of suspicion and scrutiny. Blackwater was disbanded and then recreated under different names over and over again. Academy was another name for it as well. And the reason for why was because they kept doing fucking war crimes. Okay? That's it. Because that's what security contractors do. They do war crimes.
White Mamdani. I don't know if you've heard that phrase, which made me chuckle. What do you make of the comparisons with Zoran Mamdani? Here is a proud democratic socialist who ran a very populist, leftist, anti-establishment primary campaign and then general election campaign and won. What do you make of the comparisons between you and Zoran Mamdani?
Here's the thing that people don't understand, or at least like the anti-electoralist left doesn't understand for some reason. If you're anti-electoralist and you have a principled stance on this, then fine, it's your choice, right? I'm not like that. I'm not going to argue against you all the goddamn time. I feel like it's unproductive. There's like 12 total people on the planet who have a consistent perspective on this shit, and it's utterly irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. However, if you're an anti-electoralist leftist anyway, like this is not a conversation for you regardless, because whether it's Susan Collins or whether it's Janet Mills or whether it's Graham Platner that's winning this race, winning this seat, it doesn't matter. They're all fucking bourgeois social fascists, two sides of the same coin. So it's not, from your perspective, it doesn't change anything, right? So this is why I never understand why like anti-electoralist leftists or ultras will fucking lose their minds as though they're making a sincere calculation here that like Graham Platner and fucking Susan Collins or Janet Mills. He's not. If you're making an electoralist calculation, then yeah, of course Graham Platner is far better. Reluctantly or not, you would most likely, if you cared about voting for an election at all, if you didn't think that it was a totally ridiculous thing for a real leftist to do, then yeah, you're going to fucking vote for Graham Platner. And for many people, actually, they're going to be excitedly voting for Graham Platner because he demonstrates a lot of the values that many people want. They just don't care about holding power in the U.S. Senate, which seems to be a very short-sighted idea. I know. It just doesn't make any fucking sense, though. Like, given the options that are readily available, I don't think it's inherently anti-electoralist to want him to properly address his history, honestly, in my opinion. I mean, no disagreements there, but I'm pretty sure he has already done so over and over again. There's just never going to be an answer that a lot of people are comfortable with. After all, he has a fucking Nazi tattoo. He had a Nazi tattoo on his chest. How do you explain that beyond, I'm a fucking idiot, I didn't know, okay? You can't explain it. It's impossible to explain. He literally says, I didn't know that it was a fucking Nazi tattoo when I got it. It's not going to be a satisfying answer because the social crime committed in that situation is the maximum social crime. There is literally nothing more egregious that you could do than get a fucking Nazi tattoo. Okay? There is no satisfactory answer for that when you have done the worst social crime possible. It's not a real crime. That's why I'm saying it's a social crime, right? That's it. There's no satisfying answer for that. There's no answer that will satisfy the goals here. And fell into a fucking totem cough? No, of course not. Did you just hear yourself? Wait, what? I am. I'm saying what I think. I'm saying what I believe. He's definitely a Nazi. Don't mean to change the subject, but when is the merch shipping? My girlfriend's birthday is May 14th. I don't fucking know the answer to your question. There's no social crime worse than a tattoo. No, I said there's no social crime worse than having a Nazi tattoo. Social crimes like saying slurs, okay? Social crimes like being misogynistic to varying degrees. You know, if we're talking about social crimes, not real crimes, right? Things that people would consider to be missteps or things that show who you are as a person. Yes, it's the worst fucking taboo, I guess, if you want to call it that. Yeah, you left out a key part of this. There's no worse social crime than a tattoo. Come on, law. Notice how you left out a key word there that changes it. It's not just like a silly thing, right? It's a Nazi tattoo. Yeah, I got a Nazi tattoo. That's a pretty fucking high bar. It's like the worst thing you could do as far as, you know, being a chud. Now, having said all of that, do I think he knew it was a Nazi tattoo and got it and then changed his belief system but didn't choose to change the tattoo? I don't think so. You sound way more Nazi than most of those you call a Nazi. Stop being so fake. Dude, you have to take Israel's penis out of your ass when you type, okay? Anyone that calls me a fucking Nazi is just an unbelievable dick rider of the Zionist entity, okay? That's it. There's no other human being on the planet that considers someone like myself to be a fucking Nazi other than people who are unironically 100% on board with the current iteration of the Fourth Reich, the Israeli government, okay? Yeah, totally. Yeah, everyone that opposes the current Adolf Hitler version of what's going on in the world, everyone that actually opposes the current Adolf Hitler, Benjamin Netanyahu, is actually Adolf Hitler. Thank you. Yeah, between him and I haven't actually engaged in Holocaust revisionism. He has. Okay? Famously, Benjamin Netanyahu engaged in Holocaust revisionism. Not that it matters. You don't give a shit, right? Yeah, why am I a Nazi? Explain to the class why I'm a Nazi. Go ahead. I already know. I already clocked your fucking dumbass bullshit, but go ahead. Explain it. Why do I sound so much like Hitler? Because I think Palestinians are human beings whose lives are worthy of dignity. Palestinians are understandably seeking emancipation. Is that what it is? Because I want an end to the occupation. That's why I'm Adolf Hitler. I have a consistent perspective on this. Okay? Just as I support the historical anti-Nazi movements, the Jewish partisans, for example, that sabotaged and ended up killing Nazis and maybe even civilians along the way because they were fighting a just war against the scourge of Nazism that would end up slaughtering 6 million Jews. Of course, I support and understand why Palestinians would want to resist militarily against the Israeli occupation that has gone on for 80 fucking years. He left the chat, of course. Just a little bit of scrutiny, a little bit of light, and these fucking little pieces of shit skedaddle. I like this place. It's okay to be mean to stupid people. It's not okay to be mean to stupid people. It's okay to be mean to stupid people who are mean, who have repulsive visions of a worse future, right? The last living leader of the Warsaw Ghetto Intifada was pro-Palestinian resistance, of course. I think more than terrorist, the word authoritarian has become the central load-bearing cliche of our time. In this worldview, genocide is not authoritarian, but qualified praise of China is. I think most morally healthy people see this cheesy Atlanticism, most morally healthy people, this cheesy Atlanticism increasingly rings false. If, after the past 3 years, you still believe authoritarianism versus democracy is a useful way to divide the world, then you are a child who has no interest in engaging the world as it actually is. Either then, or you're a cynic attempting to ingratiate yourself to power. You going to go back to trying to sell Blackwater Totem Cough now? Buddy, I don't have to sell them. He's already been sold to the Mainers. He's already been sold to the relevant parties here, okay? You can chirp about how unprincipled and how ideologically unsound these candidates are, but it doesn't fucking matter. I know this is the most frustrating element of people to my left flank who think that participating in the democratic process is an idiotic endeavor regardless. But from your perspective, once again, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter. Your opinion in this regard is not only fucking annoying, but it's irrelevant. It's utterly irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. Okay? And I know people get very mad and they want to have a conversation about the morality of it all. But from your framework, it doesn't fucking matter if it's Graham Platner or Susan Collins anyway, right? It doesn't matter. They're both social fascists, right? That's what you think. They're both social fascists participating in bourgeois democracy. So why the fuck do you care? You're chirping from outside of the club. You don't want to be in the club, right? So you want Susan Collins? I don't fucking understand. You're not advancing this question to me, right? Sincerely. I assume you're talking to the other chatters. Does it not even remotely confuse you that you are doing a handshake with Israel First Democrats and centrist corporate Democrats here? Does it not shock you at all? Does it not confuse you at all when you look to your left and you look to your right and the people that you see fighting this battle, this failing battle, are people that you supposedly oppose, that you despise? And now in this stage of the battle, you're now also joined by another unlikely ally. Republicans, the reactionary wing of the social fascist bourgeois democracy that we exist under. Okay? When you read a Jewish Insider article and you agree with it, doesn't that like weird you out a little bit? Only time will show if Graham Platner's attitude shift has been sincere. That's what I've said since day one. Okay? I'm willing to believe that he has had a real change of heart. He has had a real change of attitude. Especially because I hear the way he talks about wars. I hear the way he talks about imperialism. He might not say that he's an anti-imperialist, right? But his version of communicating against the American war machine is not only sound, but it also comes from a place of legitimacy, okay? Him looking like a fucking chud and having that background as a machine gunner for the Marine Corps gives him unbelievable credibility to speak out against war in a way that no one else can, in a way that even the likes of John Kerry never could, not that he would, right? In a way that Pete Buttigieg never could, not that he would. It's hard for me today that when he lies personally, he will say he hasn't worked for Blackwater, and I think that's dishonest. I want to believe that he's changed. It's too hard when he lies about it. Yeah, I think the reason why he's doing that is because he's running a fucking campaign. And this kind of stuff doesn't actually impact anyone's opinion, but he's trying to hopefully get the squishy anti-war liberals to not look in that direction. But then again, I can't. Please ignore these anti-Platner ultras and move on, Chief. No, I think for a lot of people, there's varying degrees of anti-Platner thought, okay, in this community and in all communities. You have the blue sky liberals, okay, who oppose him because he's an outsider and they can't stand a candidate that has had any kind of, has demonstrated any kind of like social behavior that they consider to be reactionary at any point in time. They saw one Reddit post where he's talking about like, where he's victim blaming, right? And it's not, the way it's presented is also unbelievably negative, but like, it's you know, he is engaged in thought crimes in the past, okay? Even if he has taken accountability for it, right? So you have the anti-Platnerites on the blue sky that were like, oh my God, this guy's actually a secret Republican. How can nobody see it? For many of them, I think the aesthetics is what is their major hang up here. They see someone that looks like a fucking chud and they can't get over it. Many of those blue sky liberals also despise things. Maybe they saw a clip here or there that caused them to think I'm a reactionary, or Maybe they saw the way that I look, the way that I carry myself, and it reminded them of people that shoved them into fucking lockers and they can't get over it. Okay? That's one wing of the anti-Platnerites. Okay? The other wing of the anti-Platnerites that I think are the most valid in terms of their critique are people who look to his background of being, working for Blackwater or whatever subsidiary of Blackwater that now exists, Academy, XE, Constalis, or whatever the fuck, and think to themselves, well, this guy joined Blackwater, a Blackwater subsidiary in 2016. That's unbelievable after doing 4 fucking tours. Okay? You don't see as many look like a woke, think like a chud, except for on the Jube. Yes. Okay. And they say, I don't know if he's actually sincerely changed or not. Okay? Wait, you got a point? I had 2 people on Blue Sky asking me about you and Platner. There are people who see the tattoo, they see all of this stuff, and they think, okay, well, the presentation here is red flags galore. Okay? There's a little bit more validity in that argument, in the skepticism. But once again, you have to match that up with what he's saying right now. And what he's saying right now is the closest. If you were to listen to what he has to say, you would realize that his comments on this issue, especially when judged with the rest of the fucking candidates that are out there, especially when judged with the rest of the Senate, is radical, okay? It is genuinely the closest to our school of thought, an anti-imperialist school of thought. It's not entirely there, but it's very close. It's closer than I have ever encountered an American politician communicating with clarity on the issues of endless war. Okay? Like, further to the left than Zohran Mamdani in many respects, coming from a guy who shot in the direction of people who look like Zohran Mamdani. Okay? So I understand that. It's funny that people try to explain to me anti-imperialist thought in this fucking community when half of you guys were, 10 years ago thinking, hoorah, thank God people are fucking joining the military so they can protect my fucking free speech and First Amendment rights. Okay? What was I doing 10 years ago? I was still talking in the same exact way that I was talking. Okay? I get it. You've had your own personal evolution in the way that you see the world, but you can't factor in that other people might have also had a similar journey. Okay? He got his tattoo covered. He's only shown growth, no regression in his policies, and he carefully explains the reasoning behind his choice and policies, unlike all those other people who were flip-floppers. Yeah. If anything, he most likely doesn't say what his actual beliefs are because he's worried that he's going to come across as a radical. I also shy away from saying my full position because I know there's a lot of people watching right now that would love to say Graham Platner is a very radical, dangerous person, similar to Hasan. Hasan Piker loves him, so I just also shy away from, communicating on this issue with the utmost clarity, even though I can't fucking help myself, especially when we end up arguing over this shit over and over again. One of the things that they're using now, the RNC is using now, is me saying, "What the fuck more do you want?" He was defending Hamas in 2014. That's literally going to appear on Fox News at some point. So just understand that, unfortunately, even though I have a policy of always saying the fucking truth, no matter what it is, and no matter how I feel, no matter how other people might get mad about it or how other people might use it, there are people who are going to consistently bastardize and consistently chop up things that I'm saying to attack candidates. Okay?
I think the comparisons are at this point primarily just because anybody who's doing something outside of the normal realm of politics with any kind of populist message for working class people, we're all going to get lumped together. I mean, I think the mayor and I's backgrounds are intensely different.
Yes.
Assume that my gun safe looks a little bit different than his. And there are elements, I think, come from in our worlds and our politics that are different. One thing that I think you can absolutely make a comparison about is our focus on organizing as a political tool. Focusing on building power in communities to have that be part of your electoral strategy. We're very much doing that here in Maine. It's why we are succeeding at the rate that we are.
Yes.
And if you look at where the mayor won, it was because he had a lot of people who turned out and organized the old-fashioned way. I think that's a fair comparison.
Do you consider yourself to be a socialist? I know in the past online you've written that you were a communist at one point.
No, I don't. And it's if you read those comments, it's very clear that I'm being very sarcastic.
Fair.
We have a political world in which any kind of populism that's good for working people gets framed as either socialism or communism.
Yes.
I do think we need to tax the rich. I think we need to invest in social programs. I think we need to do all of that. The joke is that I'm certainly not that at all, but we have this kind of vapid political narrative that always has us using these words, even though that, frankly, the words are not being ever used in like a real context.
I think Harry Truman famously said, you can call me socialist all you want, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. Let's talk about Israel and the war. You are a military veteran. You spent the better part of a decade in the military. You served in Iraq, Afghanistan. Is that what made you anti-war?
It's part of it. I mean, even when I enlisted, I was skeptical of American foreign policy. I will say once I got in it and it became my profession, and it became very much part of who I was and what I was doing, I then kind of threw myself into the work. When I left after my fourth deployment, that was when I really began to look back and recognize that everything, and it was on my fourth deployment to Afghanistan, there was a moment where I was like, we are not doing what we say we're doing. We're not going to win this war. I don't even know what winning this war looks like. I don't think anybody knows that's running this war knows what winning it looks like. And at that point, I began to wonder if we're not doing the thing that we claim we're doing, if we're not bringing democracy.
People obsessing over the four tours don't understand it is literally just some banality of evil shit if you don't see it until you step away from it. Blackwater becomes literally just job when you're trying to hold on to a positive income with 30 years of propaganda on top. Yeah, what's inconsistent in his background is the fact that he was like pro-14, and then he joined the American military, the Marine Corps, became a machine gunner, did 4 tours, and then joined back to go on Blackwater. At times he has been, at times he has demonstrated a negative opinion about American warfare, and then has also been a willing participant of it. I personally, and I've said this many times over, I can't repeat this enough. I don't give a shit. Okay? A lot of people get super, super mad when I say this, but it's the reality that we live in. Okay? The reality that we live in has absolutely normalized this death and destruction campaign. Okay? The reality that we live in has normalized this death and destruction campaign. The average American 100% does not have the same hangups that you do about joining the fucking military. Okay? They don't. They literally do not see it. They don't understand it. They have not comprehended it. If at any point they do understand it, then that's fucking fantastic. And many veterans, left flank vets in general, have comprehended their actions and work against American imperialism now. Okay? You can poo-poo that away all day, every day. Oh, we little infantry vet with an upper R middle-class family that offered to pay for his college, who refused the GI Bill to go to Georgetown and got gifted an oyster business. Like, again, and again. Yes, this background is unbelievably normal. It's a lot more normal. What is abnormal here is who he is now. Okay? Who he is now is what is unique, not what he used to do. Look, logs, if you want to see real arguments, I'm having fun. Sorry. His gun safe, what? His gun safe, what the fuck is he saying? Dude, I'm sorry. And I this is going to come across as harsh, okay? But your antisocial, personality disordered commentary about a fucking oyster business owning Mainer is not, like, he is a lot closer to the fucking average Mainer than you are, okay? Oh my God. It's the United States of America. I am not a fan of guns. Although I do like shooting guns, I believe in gun control. Significant regulations around the ownership of guns. But if you're fucking getting mad at a chud who served 4 tours and has a fucking gun safe in Maine, who do you think is closer to the average person? Who do you think is closer to the average Mainer? You or a guy who is unbelievably terrified at the prospect of someone having a fucking gun safe? It's difficult for you to comprehend that you might be the one who's out of touch. You understand that, right? I don't know. There's a couple reasons why when I hear what he's saying, I'm reminded of one of my best friends in college who was also in the Marine Corps and was unbelievably disillusioned by his experience. And that definitely changed my perspective quite a bit about people who served in the military, specifically in the Marines as well. I mean, coming from a family of his brother was a fentanyl addict. He himself struggled with addiction as well. He thought the only way for him to get out of that process, get out of his fucking bumfuck hometown, was to join the goddamn Marine Corps. Okay, someone who had reached the bottom rungs of society, and he thought this will be disciplined, this will be organized, this will force my ass into living a normal life. Now, from your perspective, you're like, what the fuck? Oh, so you got to murder brown children to get into to have some discipline in your life? What the fuck are you talking about? You're not understanding how common this experience is, and you're not understanding what people's starting points are, what people's social conditioning is that led them down this path. Okay? That's the problem. That is a major difference between someone like myself and many other people in this community that see that and go, it doesn't matter. He became a servant of an unbelievably violent force, and therefore he might not ever be accountable for that. I've said over and over and over again that I do not care about who you were in the past. I care about who you are now. Okay? I care about your experiences as long as they have actually guided you in the right direction. If I didn't believe that people had the capacity to change, I wouldn't be doing this. Okay? Given that I've seen the same exact lines of attack against Graham Platner that I've received over and over again, I'm certainly a little bit biased in his favor. That's number one. And number two, like I've explained already, like I have, I know someone who was very close to me that had a very similar experience to Graham Platner, who went through his own personal transformation. And there are many people like him in this community. A lot of you guys fucking yell all the time about how like every veteran is a baby killer, baby murderer. You don't realize that you're fucking surrounded by many of them, okay? Many veterans that joined, went into active duty. I mean, I literally fucking interviewed a combat medic. Hamawi is a combat medic. He saw combat. He was patching up the baby killers, right? That's your perspective, right? Like your attitude is like, oh, these guys are every veteran is a baby killer. Like, you don't understand. This is the United States of America. Okay? Cleric, don't say oof. I'm defending you right now. Okay? I'm trying to explain that, you can't have this kind of attitude if you want to fucking build a movement, if you want to organize. You have to do away with this mentality that like people are beholden to the crimes that they've committed, or people are beholden to and permanently stuck as who they used to be. This all goes back to your message and saying what I hear you say all the time, which is meeting people where they're at. Yes. Stop behaving like personality disordered weirdos when you make these assessments. People could easily say the same about the IDF. Not all of them kill children. Buddy, this is a consistent position that I have. I have literally interviewed people who served in the fucking IDF. Hello. This is a newfound phenomena for everybody. People who didn't even know what the fuck the IDF was before October 7 will come in here and start, posturing in this way. That's why people to my left flank say I'm a Zionist. In any case, you can be poor and choose not to go kill children. I and many others have done so. I know you're more moral than Graham Platner is, okay? You did it. It doesn't matter though, right? What does this do other than just say you're just a better person? Okay? Then you go and run an outsider candidacy, okay? And deliver a convincing anti-war message as well while doing so, and I'll back you to the fucking hilt. But that's not the reality that we're existing in right now, okay? We're in the current reality. We got to get back to reality. What does that have to do with this conversation? Yeah, Ofer Kasif was in the IDF as a paratrooper, and then he became a conscientious objector. People are shaped by their circumstances, but can change. That is a profoundly important value. It's one of the fundamentals in this community. In any case, a lot of people are fortunate enough to have not made this unbelievably bad decision. And that's it. So all you're doing in that situation is no different than when people chirp about like being born with a copy of fucking Das Kapital in one hand. and being a principled Marxist-Leninist since birth, you know what I mean? In comparison to these fucking radlibs who don't fully understand, who don't grasp the nuances of the theoretical framework of dialectical materialism and how it's actually supposed to be the guiding North Star, the guiding principle of all revolutionaries. No, that just means that you had a very different upbringing than the overwhelming majority of people around you. But that doesn't make you a better person overall, or who you are now is what matters. Americans, unfortunately, have this belief that reform is impossible, that rehabilitation will never happen, that people are insincerely claiming these new positions. They're cynically presenting themselves in a certain way. I choose to believe that rehabilitation is possible. If I didn't believe that rehabilitation was possible, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, and I wouldn't be effective at what I'm doing anyway. Think about how many positions you have changed since you started watching this broadcast. Think about how different of a person you are now. So many of you come up to me every single day, including even today at the train station, and say, look, man, you've changed my life in such a meaningful way. You made me see the world in a very different way, and I really appreciate that. That is a universal message that I hear from many of you in this community, okay? Now imagine if I was like, tell me what kind of radlib tendencies you had beforehand. What did you do beforehand? I bet you were a reactionary. I bet you were, were you a Nazi? I bet you're faking, changing now. Every single time someone came into this community and was like, I experienced a lot of growth as a consequence of being a part of this community. Imagine if I just held you to who you were, the shameful experiences that you went through in the past, that would be fucking ridiculous and unbelievably unproductive. Many of you have the privilege of being anonymous on the internet when you talk like this, okay? I personally believe in rehabilitation, and that means rehabilitation for social crimes as well as even literal crimes, even fucking war crimes, as a matter of fact, because I find it to be unproductive to just like consistently chirp about where people used to be and not who they are now. People like to be super judgmental when they're anonymous. Seems odd. It's not odd at all. People don't even realize what they're like, what people would look, how people would judge them if they could see their past experiences, their past mistakes, their past opinions, their past actions, right? You're being really gay about this? Oh, dude, I am the #1 dick eater when it comes to the concept of rehabilitation and being as kind and as charitable to people as possible, as long, until they show you that they are not actually reformed at all in any way, shape, or form and are simply lying. Because there are plenty of people who will abuse that charitability, okay? Plenty of people do it in here all the time. They say, just curious. Can I give you constructive criticism? And then it's not constructive criticism at all. They'll be like, just curious, why are you Adolf Hitler reincarnate? Okay, well, you're not just curious, right? You're just abusing the charity that we have here. We have to be committed in our belief that people have the capacity to change, learn from their mistakes, become better people, and actually become comrades, okay?
If we're not trying to make the world safer, what are we doing? And when I began to look closer, I really began to fully buy into the fact that these wars just make people wealthy. And these wars are good for people in political power. They use them as electoral tools. They use them in ways to display like their quote unquote strength as leaders. And none of them take into account the human cost. And for me, the human cost is not a theory, and it's not something to be thought about in this sort of non-material way. The cost of war is something I have seen up front. I have seen friends die. I have seen what happens when high explosives interact with children. It's an awful thing. And I fundamentally believe that it should not be the core of how we use our foreign policy.
Do you believe that Donald Trump and the Trump family and Jared Kushner, that part of this Iran war is about them making money?
Yes, of course. I mean, essentially, everything the Trump administration does at some point, you boil it down to them, their family members, or their inner circle making money off of it. That is certainly part of it.
How would you describe the U.S. relationship with Israel?
I mean, at this point, I would just say shameful. You know, this is what has happened in Gaza it's the moral question of our time. And we failed it miserably. We continue to fail. You know, there's a genocide that has been committed in Gaza, and we continue to not only not stand up against it, but allow it to happen, run political cover for it, run diplomatic cover for it. You know, down the road, history is not going to remember the leaders of this nation who, of both parties, by the way, who allowed this to happen. It's not going to remember them well. And it brings me an immense amount of shame, and I think it brings a lot of shame to a lot of Americans that even now we're continuing to have this relationship and to support the mass killing of innocent civilians.
So on that note, what would a Senator Graham Platner of Maine do in the United States Congress to prevent us from carrying on our complicit relationship with a genocidal nation?
Well, I certainly would have voted with the 40 Democrats who yesterday voted to stop sending money and arms to the Israeli government. I would support that wholeheartedly. And down the road, if it is a relationship that is going to be repaired, we need to be looking at an entirely different government in an entirely different structure than what exists now. You know, it's not as simple for me as like the genocide just stops and then we turn the bombs and the money back on, right? Like we need to see a hell of a lot more than that to justify American support for an ally who is willing.
Are you saying you would want to see Israel make actual changes to the way it runs itself, controls the Palestinians, for example?
Yeah, sorry, it's going to be really tough for me to fucking poo-poo this guy, okay? I mean, come on, dude. It blows my mind because I was wrong, because as I was growing in this community, there were chirpers that would argue with you that have similar opinions to what I used to have. I understand the hesitancy of some of us here, but people can change. We need to help them change. Exactly. Yeah. It's tough. It's tough, man. Perhaps that's the reason why so many of you make the wrong comparisons when you say, oh, he could be like another John Fetterman, or you're like, oh, what if he was an IDF veteran, or whatever the fuck. You don't listen to what he's saying right now. You're like, oh, well, this is a lesser evil vote. How is it any different than Kamala Harris? It's not a lesser evil vote. What the fuck are you talking about? This is not a lesser evil vote at all.
Well, it's apartheid policies. That would be an issue for you.
Yes, absolutely. And illegal settlements need to end. In fact, they need to be rolled back. I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to repair this relationship.
Would you follow in the footsteps of Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez?
The same ultras that now think, do you condemn Hamas to be a silly question because they understand the conditions of Palestinians will now, for some reason, refuse to understand why the poverty draft works or why someone would join the military when the major prevailing position in America in the military is good and honorable and you're serving your people. No, but they're going to cook you for that comparison. They're going to say, what do you mean joining Hamas is an emancipatory goal as opposed to like joining an offensive, unnecessary and unbelievably violent imperialist war. The reality is it's the social conditions that absolutely motivate people into making these terrible decisions. Okay, you can't make a comparison between someone who's living in the imperial core versus someone who is a victim of imperialist wars.
Who has said she opposes
There's definitely a different morality there.
U.S. military aid to Israel, including for the quote-unquote defensive Iron Dome.
Yes. I mean, look, we have laws on the books in this country that say that regimes, governments committing war crimes do not get American aid. But all we are asking is that we follow our own laws here. It's not that complicated.
Your opponent, Janet Mills, was recently asked if she denies that Israel is carrying out a genocide in Gaza. She kind of threw up her hands and just started talking about genocides in Sudan and weirdly in Somalia. She also mentioned the Rwandan genocide from over 30 years ago. She wouldn't say Israel is committing a genocide. She just dodged that point. What do you think's driving that kind of answer and behavior from her?
You know, I very much think she just comes from an era of establishment politicians that are just fundamentally wrong on this issue and who think that these sort of mealy-mouthed, politically incoherent responses are going to be acceptable to the American people, and they're not. People don't want to hear like a 10-minute rambling, winding explanation invoking genocides from 30 years ago and about how concerning it all is. People don't want concern. People want it to stop. And they want politicians and leaders who are going to call it for what it is, for what the entire world sees it for being. And I mean, I just think that there are a lot of establishment politicians who just cannot come to grips with this shift.
Just on that note, just grabbing something you just said a moment ago, do you think the reason for your success so far in the polls is that you do speak like a normal person? Like, is that a problem that has plagued the Democratic Party, that everyone talks like a consultant, speaks in talking points? And actually, Donald Trump showed us that...
That's absolutely 100% a big part of the reason why a lot of people also can't come to terms with who this guy is. Okay? That's what it is. A lot of people have been so conditioned into hearing perfectly crafted, focus group tested messaging that when they hear someone just go, yeah, it's a fucking genocide. Yeah, I was in Blackwater, whatever, all this shit. When they hear that, it's just like well, the Blackwater stuff, they don't even give a fuck about. The people I'm talking about are just like, yeah, I said some really fucked up things on Reddit. It's not who I am now. They go, whoa, what the fuck? Those people, for the most part, don't care that he was a fucking machine gunner or even joined Blackwater. I'm talking about rad libs in general. They care about like the way he talks and the way he presents himself, the way he carries himself, the way he the way he communicates on issues, right?
The American public not only don't care if you don't talk like a politician, they actually prefer it if you don't.
Oh, by 100%. It was something that's been fascinating for me in this entire experience is realizing just how many people who run for office don't actually have any deeper political beliefs. Like, for me, being able to explain my positions is relatively easy. I feel like I've got a very strong political foundation. I know what I believe. I know why I believe it. And it's easy for me to talk about it because this is stuff that I believe. It's not, I don't have these like pre-memorized focus group tested talking points that I have to Rolodex through in my brain. I'm running on my politics. And what I have found is that when you run on your politics, people just find that accessible and understandable. And when you go out into communities like we've been doing, we hold town halls almost daily. When you do that, and you talk about what you believe, why you believe it, and what policies you want to enact to make those beliefs a reality, people they understand it and they connect with it. And I think that very much has to do with why we've succeeded in the polls thus far.
So on that note, a perfect segue into what I want to talk about next, which I'm sure you're fed up about talking about, but is all the controversies associated with you and especially your online comments from the past. And since you said you're comfortable explaining yourself, let's talk very plainly about some of this stuff, because I know you've spoken about this before, but it's the first time you and I are speaking about any of this. The biggest single controversy of your campaign, which is not going to go away if Susan Collins has her way, is a tattoo you got in 2007 that you've since had covered up of a skull and crossbones that resembles a very infamous Nazi symbol.
The chirpers are already out, okay? Look at that, look. Something you're seeing today is one of the signature characteristics of the left insurgents is that they're very graceless about winning. They got what they wanted in Maine, but instead of pivoting to bring people in and beat Susan Collins, they're doing ongoing factionalism. Hey, Matt, what happened when Zoran won the fucking primary? Oh, that's right. The centrist right-wing candidate launched another candidacy against the fucking Democrat, and virtually all of the top-level Democratic Party ball endorse him. Even after Zoran Mamdani won the election resoundingly in the general, what did the Democratic Party do? Oh, that's right. Kirsten Gillibrand went on a radio show in New York City and called him a fucking jihadist. Okay, unbelievably racist shit he had to withstand in that primary process and then certainly in the general. What the fuck are you talking about, man? What the hell are you talking about? It was it was disgusting to see and hear from Kirsten Gillibrand the shit that she said about Zoran after he won the general. Okay? Graceless. Talk about graceless. Chuck Schumer to this day has not endorsed Zohran Kwame Mamdani, by the way. The entire establishment wing of the party either chose not to endorse him or tacitly supported the right-wing candidacy, the right-wing spoiler candidacy of Andrew Cuomo. Kirsten Gillibrand called him a jihadist after he became mayor, the Democratic mayor. What is this totally new history? Ahistorical. That is not true. What do you mean? What's not true? The entirety of the Democratic Party was in support after Zohran Mamdani won the primary. Really? Was Gillibrand after the primary or after the general? I think Gillibrand was after the general. Was it not? Am I misremembering? Oh, he wasn't mayor when Gillibrand said that? It was after the primary? It was June. Okay. Hakeem Jeffries gave the quietest possible endorsement at the last minute. You don't even need to bring up Zoran to statement. Yeah, it's also, yeah. What's really funny, by the way, is that Graham Platner celebrated Janet Mills's accomplishments as governor and said that he basically was like, thank you for doing this. You've done incredible work in this state. I appreciate it. I look forward to working with you. Janet Mills did not endorse him. Yeah. Janet Mills is not yet endorsing Graham Platner for Senate and says he'll have to earn the support of Maine voters. Governor Mills has never voted for Susan Collins, so she will not do so in this election either. As Maine's governor, she will continue to support Democratic candidates across Maine, and she will continue to hear and watch how Graham Platner works to earn the support of Maine voters, just as she will keep a close eye on Maine's congressional and gubernatorial primaries as well. Like, what are you talking about? He earned it so fucking hard you had to drop out of the race. What are you saying? Anyway, do you think the Dem establishment right now might throw another candidate on the board, or is it too late? I think it's too late. But remember what I told you about how there would absolutely be people that will engage in myth making, rewriting of history, and talking about how this victory against the centrist candidacy of Janet Mills is actually confirming their priors. That's precisely what Matt Iglesias is doing. Look, I've been very bullish on Platner from day one. The same people that would say Zoran's politics cannot work elsewhere. It only works in a fucking, D plus 35 district. New York City is too woke. Try that shit in a fucking purple state. Are now going to turn around and be like, well, Maine is actually, historically a Democratic safe, a Democratic safe seat, even though he's literally running to unseat a Republican. Okay, yeah, here's the retcon coming in. I've been pretty bullish on Platner from day one and would really like to see Democrats win the Senate seat to maximize their odds of halting the magnification of the judiciary, even though I don't really agree with Platner about factional issues. Do people on the left want me to continue wanting Platner to win because that will advance shared cross-factional goals? Or if he wins a D+4 state in a very favorable national political climate, will they insist that he has completely discredited everything I believe in? Again, he has discredited everything you fucking believe in. Shut the fuck up, egg boy. Shut the fuck up. You don't know how to lose with grace. Your ideology is dying. Your methods have been proven to be wrong. And he does this over and over again. He did this with Palestine as well. He was like, oh, here we go. The pro-Palestinian crowd doing their thing again. They're electoral poison. It turns out the electoral poison was Matt Iglesias' style of politics, which he fucking cheered on. He was like, oh, I'm agreeing with everything Kamala Harris is saying and doing. It's fantastic. She's going to win the election. Turns out that was a fucking disqualifying moment for Matt Iglesias, but it doesn't matter because as long as you brown nose the super wealthy in this fucking country, you will always have a Substack that they keep pumping money into. Have a little bit of decency, man. Have a little bit of decency. Have some fucking shut the fuck up juice. Yeah, Matt Iglesias went from never talk about Palestine, it's electoral poison. Of course we're going to support Israel to, yeah, everyone should shut the fuck up about Hasan's opinions on Israel and go on his stream and argue about, I don't know, rezoning or whatever the fuck he cares about, right? Like removing building codes or whatever. I already lived through the message that got 51% of the vote in New York City points the way for the National Democratic Party news cycle without killing myself. So I suppose I can take a Maine cycle too. But at some point, we need to win red states. See, he's moving on. He went from this won't work in a purple state for a red seat to this won't work in a deep red state. This dumb fuck is not going to stop until you're like, hey, if you don't win Mississippi with Marxist-Leninist principles, then your method doesn't fucking work. Goalpost moved again. Okay? Now, for the record, I do believe that you can win Mississippi and Alabama with a similar style of left populism because those places where people are unbelievably poor, could also benefit tremendously from leftist economic thought, from leftist legislation. That's what it is. There are different versions. Don't say, I don't know. Okay? We're done with this. We're done with this mentality. It will take time. But we absolutely can rebuild confidence in good governance in these places. We're talking about places where the government is left behind. People are basically lumpen proles. They're unbelievably reactionary because they have no hope. They've never seen good governance. They've never experienced it. And that's precisely the reason why they lean into culture war reactionary frameworks and think, well, you know, neither side is really doing it for me, but at least this side is more entertaining and it's telling me who to fear. Historically, these were the places where communist movements thrived, okay? It's not going to happen overnight. But notice how this man shifted the goalpost from, oh, it only works in New York City to, okay, it works in Maine too, but talk to me when it works in Alabama. Talk to me when it works in Arkansas. Talk to me when it works in Nebraska. Talk to me when it works. If it worked in Iowa, he would say, well, Iowa's no Mississippi, you know? Oh, Ohio. Well, Ohio doesn't count. It's purplish. Try Kentucky. Oh, it worked in Kentucky? Well, you know, maybe it'll work in Oklahoma then, huh? Talk to me when it works in Oklahoma. It is seeing some success in places like Nebraska too, but, you know, it is what it is. They're all the same. Working class union spaces run down by out-of-touch politicians sitting in their ivory tower in D.C. Absolutely. Do we think that people in Alabama live in this magical universe where they couldn't benefit from free healthcare? Do we think that they don't need a roof over their heads? Do we think that they don't need their infrastructure to be fixed? They do. Do we think that they're like unbelievably invested in the American war machine for some reason? They're like, no, I actually don't want schools in my neighborhood. I would much rather give that money to Lockheed Martin so they can invent new ways of murdering children overseas. Please, that's what I want. I live in Alabama and that's what I want. I'm a mythical being. I want moderates. That's what I want. I live in Alabama and I'm always looking for a more moderate Democrat to vote for potentially. It's ridiculous. That's why the Platner race was important. And I said it from day one, that it breaks away. That's why these guys are chirping so hard, by the way, because it destroys their argument that like Zoran can't be too radical because Zoran's policies won't work in Maine, right? Or even if the rest of the party is associated with Zoran Mamdani, then people in red areas or people in red states or people in purple states will never vote for the Democrats because they'll go, oh, but Zoran's a scary Islamist communist, an Islamo-communist. Well, it turns out people aren't as fucking racist as you are, dumbass. This is the death knell of centrism, okay? True, his views alienated a lot of non-trivial faction of Democrats and led to a fairly weak performance, but New York City's very progressive, so he won anyway. Oh my God. You were just talking about factionalism, you fucking dingus. You were just talking about factionalism. So it's okay when the centrists engage in factionalism. You're complaining that an outsider left flank candidate's supporters can't celebrate that your theory on Zoran-style populism failing in purple states is falling apart. Shouldn't celebrate that your theory on Zoran-style populism failing in purple states is falling apart. Here in Arkansas's 3rd Congressional District, we have a really good AIPAC tracker, endorse Free Palestine, Medicare for All, abolish ICE candidate running. I have no idea what his odds are, but I bet it'll do way better than the last damn who ran. Southern organizer here, most politically conscious people tend to leave the South to be the dumping ground and graveyard of the United States and don't realize that part of the reason is like this. / they're allowed to not care is because we have the highest density of black folks. Yeah, 100%. That is a huge part of this. Huey P. Newton was born here. We had some of the first multiracial solidarity strikes, etc. And no one questions why they leave us in the South to die. There's also a finite amount of resources. So because black folk have been so effectively shut out from the political process through redistricting, and that still continues, obviously, to this day, as we saw in the case of the Louisiana Supreme Court decision, that it's impossible hurdle for the Democratic Party to climb, and therefore they don't give a shit. That's what it is. That's 100% what it is. I believe that not everyone is going to go with Zoran's policies, right? but adjusted to the localities, you can have Zoran-style left-flank candidates that are born and raised in these communities that could absolutely defeat incumbent Republicans even. The hardest part for them is to gain prominence within the Democratic Party's machine. And the hardest part usually is for them to even go through the primary system, because the primaries are so effective in shutting out, especially in the Deep South, so effective in shutting out disruptive candidates that are coming from the left flank, Bernie-crats. Yeah. There's also incredibly corrupt campaigning hurdles to overcome in red states like Louisiana. Dems will not invest in candidates here while the GOP dumps money into theirs. No, the Dems do invest in candidates there. They just invest in their kind of candidates. Because you see in places like Kentucky, you know, you got Amy McGrath, right? Think about how much money she was able to raise. What happened? It was an abject failure. But Amy McGrath was exactly the type of candidate that Democrats do like. You know? Air Force pilot. Centrist. Reasonable centrist Democrat. Anyway, what the fuck? Any thoughts on this? Kegsbreath is saying that the 60-day limit on war powers doesn't apply tomorrow because the ceasefire paused the war. Oh, that's funny. Anyway, I don't think there's a winning message in the South that doesn't have an R next to it. In the current political environment, it will take time. It's beyond the imagination how racially polarized the South is. Dude, I don't believe that. You can have, you can literally put think like a woke, act like a chud on the board in the South, and it would surprise many people how successful, how effective that could be. Use optics to your advantage. Okay? You're not going to have your old Muslim communist run in every fucking seat. That's not what I'm saying, you know? Doesn't have to be brown boys galore. It's just we haven't had a good string of candidacies. So we don't know. Funny that you're complaining that an outsider left flank candidate supporters are celebrating that your theory on Zoran-style populism failing in purple states is falling apart. Disagreements. Anyway, I'm not even going to dignify Matt Iglesias with a response, actually. Fuck it. Anyway, when are you heading to your event in Philly today? I don't know. Sam Foster, a black 26-year-old, almost won on a Zoran-style platform in the mayoralship in Marietta, Georgia, 3 times the turnout, and he lost by 80 votes. Yeah, let's look at another one. Some thoughts as Mill drops out. I've been poorly inclined towards Platner for the obvious reasons. No use relitigating them. It seems pretty clear Platner just has the juice with Maine voters and Mills did not. He has a better chance in the general. Despite my reservations, I would vote for Platner over Collins if I lived in Maine and encourage others to do the same. Controlling the Senate is too important to risk. It's good that Mills is dropping out of a losing race rather than fighting a nasty battle to the end. Deserves some credit. Oh, yeah, how brave of her. Lots of people will want to universalize this race to be about their particular thing. Populism versus establishment, left versus center, white, working class aesthetics, etc. But Maine is an odd state, and I think it's too difficult to universalize it. Of course. There's no lessons to be learned here, obviously. Please remember Abigail Spanberger. That's the only lesson you should learn. Abigail Spanberger everywhere, okay? That is the universal lesson to learn, is when a centrist wins an election. When a left flank candidate wins a primary, there's no lesson to be learned there. The attempt here is to claim that it is personalities rather than policy. Of course, this fraud says that. Law, yeah, obviously. Stop learning. Yeah, Maine is too woke and too gay. That's what it is. Remember when the centrists had $50 million and underperformed Biden by 10 points? Don't even fucking it's just so annoying. Yeah, it turns out in Maine, they had tested this theory, putting a centrist with good in-state name recognition against Susan Collins, and they kept fucking losing, okay? I think that's what Michael from, not Pennsylvania, but Taiwan, is referencing here. Now there's a real shot to flip this seat, and all of a sudden, all of the usual suspects, the Praetorian Guard of centrism, are chirping about how there's no unique lesson to be learned here. Look away. Interesting.
You said you had no idea about the connection, saying, quote, I absolutely would not have gone through life having this on my chest if I knew that. When exactly did you find out that the tattoo on your chest could be a Nazi tattoo or seen as one?
Oh, about 3 or 4 days before I had it covered up. I mean, I got that tattoo with some other Marines when we were on shore leave in Croatia in 2007. and then I had it for 17 years. I went through 2 security clearances. I re-enlisted in the United States Army, got screened for gang and hate tattoos, and then I went to work for the State Department on the ambassador security team in Kabul, where I got a top secret clearance and also got screened. Never came up. I took my shirt off in front of my extended Jewish family the entire time. I would not have done that if I thought I had some obviously recognizable white supremacist or Nazi.
Yeah, that's his biggest fucking defense, by the way. Like his relatives, his extended family is Jewish, bro. Like that photo that they released of him dancing with his shirt off, he's in front of his Jewish extended family there, and they're dancing with him. To me, this is unbelievably tapped in on, you know, racist and Nazi tattoos. But it was shocking to hear both Bernie Sanders and Sam Cedar say, yeah, I didn't know that was a Nazi tattoo. Who cares? But, you know, we're not going to sit here and goy-splain, okay? We're not going to do that. If the Council of Jewish Leftist Elders have spoken, then we sit and we learn, okay? We sit our Gentile asses down and we listen, okay? They don't have a PhD in racism like you. That's true. Wouldn't this say more about how the tattoo passed government screenings? Yeah, the government screening thing I don't care about because obviously fucking there's plenty of Marines with Nazi tattoos, like straight up visible Nazi tattoos. It was shocking to me that even in this community, 60% of chat didn't even know at the time, which was genuinely confusing because I've talked about Nazi tattoos extensively, right?
Simple.
So Graham, why then, and that all sounds perfectly reasonable, especially the security checks. So why then did a former top official on your campaign, Genevieve McDonald, your former political director, tell The Guardian last year, while he may not have known what his tattoo meant when he selected the image, it's not plausible he remained ignorant of its meaning all these years?
I don't know why she said that. She was only on the campaign for a little over a month and would not have known anything about things I would have known. She quit in rather spectacular fashion and then spent some time. Yeah, it's saying.
This happened with Abdul too. Very interesting. Abdul had a similar situation. Former person who worked on the campaign quits and then takes opposition research that he basically fucking stole to right-wing outlets. Very interesting. Now, the commonalities here between Abdul El-Sayed and Graham Platner are what? Both Bernie endorsed and both anti-Zionists. Very strange. Very strange stuff, folks.
Deprecating things about the campaign and about myself.
Okay, then why did CNN report that they spoke to an acquaintance of yours from more than a decade ago who said you talked to him about your tattoo resembling a Nazi symbol?
Well, I believe they actually reported on a Jewish Insider investigation, which had spoken to one anonymous person who, when they claimed they knew me, it was years. They said they knew me from when I worked at a bar from years I didn't even work at that bar.
Okay.
And
so you're denying that allegation, just to be clear?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It also came out after the story broke. So, you know, it's...
Just on the bigger picture, I can understand what you're saying, and I'm hearing your denials and the point about your extended Jewish family. It makes sense. And you're a progressive, so people are giving you a lot of leeway because they like your policy platform.
I disagree, by the way. I don't think you get leeway as a progressive. I think you get a way higher standard as a progressive that no other person is ever fucking forced to abide by. A standard that you might not have even placed upon yourself. Now, not in the case of the Totenkopf tattoo, but just in general. The idea, for example, that like, you know, I'm traveling by train, but I took business class rather than coach, which was only fucking, what, $30 to $50 more expensive for a ticket. Like, these are the types of things that people would never think twice about, okay? They would never think twice about. But if you get unlimited leeway if you are not a self-identified progressive, socialist, leftist in general, because people will openly say it. Like, they'll be like, dude, you're even in the realm of content, right? In the realm of content, people will turn around and will straight up be like, train wrecks, Asmongold, you're like openly saying you're a piece of shit. But then you turn around and you have like a totally different standard of morality for this guy, Hasan. And they will just say, well, yeah, that's because I'm not a fucking socialist. Like, they openly say it. They openly admit it. They're like, yeah, I can do whatever the fuck I want. I'm saying I'm a bad guy. He's saying he's a good guy, but he's not. I think you and for someone like Grant, this is true of your immediate audience. I think what Mehdi is gesturing is that a more white, disaffected voters who are maybe looking for something different and realizing they won't be serviced by Republicans and Dems who are supposed to do that aren't.
But surely you would admit, if you were a Republican who had been found with that tattoo on your chest, people, progressives, Democrats, would be losing their minds, wouldn't they not?
Well, I think if I had that...
Dude, Mehdi is such a fucking debate pervert. I swear to God. He literally can't stop himself. Like, that's a classic... He can't stop himself. He has to. I know he loves Graham Platner. He really likes him. Okay. But you know, he's got that dog in him where he's like, it's just chipping away. He has to fucking chomp at it a little bit. He loves debating so much. I mean, look, I respect it. You know, it is what it is. He's the only debate lord I respect.
And had displayed at any point in my life any affinity for fascism or bigotry or, you know, racism, then that would absolutely be something to connect. Thing is, in all of my Reddit posts, if you read through them, they've been out there since October, every single one of them. It's fairly clear that I have been long an opponent of fascism, bigotry, and racism. Sometimes with language that people say is too extreme, even though, I don't know, fighting fascism seems like something we should all be dedicated to.
On the language front, though, this has caught up with you now. We talked a moment ago about how popular you've become because you speak like a normal person, but that comes with its own challenges in the political world, which is you've used the word retarded, which I saw you apologize for this week. You've made comments about...
Mehdi said the R word. He dropped it, bro. Chill. What you wearing? Not gonna lie, you looking fresh. Thank you, King.
Women that both Janet Mills and Susan Collins have attacked you.
Yeah, he should be like, I'm a Redditor, bro. That's the real R word, okay? The real R word, which is the same as a substitute for the other R word, is that I'm a Redditor.
There's the tattoo. Do you at least accept that going into the general election, this is going to be an issue for you because the Republican Party are not going to let this slide. They're going to use this against you. You know.
Yeah, what are they going to do? That he says slurs? That's so funny. Like, Republicans doing the fake woke shit I expect them to do it. They're doing it to me right now, right? Where they're like, oh, Hasan is being mean to black people. It seems like he's anti-black. Bitch, if I was anti-black, you'd love me. The fuck do you mean? Like, oh, Hasan is anti-Asian. Again, if I was actually anti-Asian, if I was being hateful, you would love me. What are you talking about?
You know the word baggage. Do you at least accept?
Trump has literally called Biden the R word. Yeah, exactly.
That from a perceptual point of view, regardless of your individual justifications for all of it, do you accept politically it is a big challenge for you going into a general election with all of this quote-unquote baggage?
I will say I don't really think so, because in my experience thus far going around Maine, a lot of people look at that and say, like, okay, so he's a guy that never wanted to run for office. He's not of the system at all, and he very clearly just comes from the normal world and has existed in the normal world, coming with all of the things that come with that. I mean, I was in the Marine Corps infantry, and I have worked on a boat on the ocean for the past decade. Salty language, that kind of stuff it is a thing that I am constantly working to improve.
Dude, come on, dude. That's why it's so funny that like HasanAbi heads especially are. It shocks me that there are people in this community that look at this dude and will literally repeat the same fucking lines of attack that I receive on a daily basis. You should be more in tune with this kind of like cynical outrage manufacturing than anybody else, even down to what he's saying here. That's what I say all the time in all of my media appearances. What do I always say? I'm like, look, man, you know, I'm vulgar and I'm working on it. And sometimes I say things that people don't like to hear. But what matters is what's inside. What matters is who you are. What matters is what your advocacy is. Just outside stream? No, I don't. And I try not to in general. Okay? And I haven't in a very long time. But it's just like, Your empathy was never in question, though? No, for the outsiders, it is. What are you talking about? The community should not be saying the same things as the GOP? Yeah, exactly. If he was a fucking Nazi, the Republicans would love him. What are we talking about? You mentioned it on the Ebro show? I don't know where I brought it up, but you got to give me a timestamp. First time in the primaries, I was like, bro, come on. Like, I'm helping you out here, but, you know.
My guy.
Tit for tat, quid pro quo. Like, we gotta do something for the Turks. Forgive my ignorance, but why is saying the R word such a big deal? It's ableist language that's hurtful to hear for many people. I've I was a slinger, a regular slinger of the R word. I've gotten a lot. I mean, I don't say it at all any longer, but it's just not a battle I'm willing to fight. You know what I mean? It's like such a stupid hill to stand on, to fight. Like, what? You're fucking fighting your right to say slurs? Like, what's wrong with you? You know? Like, I'm just not going to do that. Like, there are obviously people who take it way too far, where they'll be like, you say psychotic, you say crazy. Like, these are also to varying degrees of like ableist terminology. And it's like, okay, dude, well, you know, we have to make use of pejoratives, right? Like, Jesus fucking Christ.
But it also very much is because of the place that I come from and the world that I come from. And I am working very hard to always be improving and to always be being a better version of myself. I think for a lot of people, that's what they're working on too. And it is a way that we can sort of demonstrate that you can change. You can improve yourself.
R word was used institutionally. Yeah, guess what? So was fucking idiot, okay? Idiot was also used institutionally. It's the euphemism treadmill. I'm not going to relitigate it. It's dumb as fuck, okay? You just pick and choose. Yes, it's hypocritical. We all do it. Who cares? Just it's a normal part of existing, okay? Just be kind to people.
You can take accountability for things that you have said or done in the past. And while, of course, the Republican Party is going to try to hammer me into the ground on this stuff, but truthfully, as I go around Maine, people in Maine don't care about that. People in Maine care about the fact that the hospitals are closing.
Yes. You do have a 27-point lead over Janet Mills, so clearly you're right about that. I think in the general it's slightly different, right? Because the Republican Party, as you know, and Susan Collins is no fool, she's held that seat for a while. They're doing their Oppo research on you. I got to ask the question, Graham, is there other stuff out there that's going to come out now, between now and November? Is there another chat forum we don't know about, another tattoo we haven't seen?
No. Everybody's seen all my tattoos now, and everybody's read all my internet comments. And we released everything. Okay. We put it all back in October.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. And look, the Republican Party is absolutely going to lie. You know, at some point that's coming. They, said they swift voted John Kerry. They said Barack Obama wasn't an American. So when it comes to the Republican Party, God only knows what they're going to come up with that isn't true. They just ran an AI-generated thing.
They did, yes. Ridiculous.
Yeah. So, the dirty tricks, that's all going to happen.
But one last question on this before we move on. What do you say to supporters of Janet Mills' establishment? Everyone say, look, it's just not worth the risk. Why put up someone with all of this stuff who has to explain away Nazi-looking tattoos? Why not just put up the governor of the state who's already won statewide as a Democrat and doesn't have a tattoo of a skull and bones on her?
Because the governor consistently loses in the polls to Susan Collins. And the governor is very much close to the political establishment. The governor was the DS candidate chosen by Washington, D.C. I'll tell you, that's far more risky right now. People don't want establishment politics.
That's true.
People want real people in politics who are going to fight for the material needs of real people.
On that note, let's do a quick rapid fire to see where you stand on some real issues. Would you vote in favor of a $20 minimum wage?
Yes.
Would you vote to get rid of the Senate filibuster?
Yes.
Would you vote to convict Donald Trump in an impeachment trial?
Yes.
Do you support statehood for D.C. and Puerto Rico?
Yes.
Do you support Chuck Schumer for Senate majority?
Okay, bro, chill. Now he's just copying my shit, okay? I'm just, I'm done. Loomer, Lamau. Oh, I saw this. Hasan, you are political wet toilet paper. I love that, we are currently covering a candidate that closely resembles my values. okay, at least in his campaign strategy. A candidate that is doing the method. And you're like, oh, dude, I know that there's a ginormous victory that this candidate just secured in the Democratic Party primaries, which is perhaps part of the reason why the Democrats in the controlling the levers of power in the party have been actively fucking slamming people like yourself as a stand-in for what they will do, what kind of disciplining operation they're engaging with their left-flank candidates that are insurgent and winning and taking away control from the Democratic Party, but also it's wet toilet paper, okay? It's just wet toilet paper. Well, I guess, this is the wet toilet paper that is still wiping the asshole, okay? You're the fucking asshole, and you're getting wiped, bitch.
Majority Leader.
No.
Do you support Hakeem Jeffries for House Speaker in 2027?
No.
Would you support a ban on assault weapons?
No.
If you go on to win your Senate seat in Maine, will you run for president in 2028?
No.
All right, so those answers, I think a lot of people will be nodding along, apart from probably the assault weapon.
You'd be 100% correct if you admitted Platner might be fake, might stab the left in the back. Because you don't, you're only 50% correct. Yeah, there's no reason for me to engage in this kind of... there's no reason for me to make these sorts of assumptions and be disillusioned and be pessimistic right now.
Weapons ban questioned, which I think, as you know, a lot of progressives will disagree with you on and say it's a major issue that helps prevent mass shootings. What would you say to them?
I think in a country that's already awash in guns, we have 20 to 30 million AR-15s in America. We don't actually know how many. Access to people with a violent history or people who are going to commit a violent act, that is where we're going to see the most effect. And I support universal background checks, and I support red flag laws, like the one that Maine passed by ballot measure overwhelmingly last November. I think that those, combined with expanding mental health services across the board as part of a much more substantial healthcare system, and using the power of the federal government to elevate people out of...
I'm from Puerto Rico. What's your take on statehood or independence? Much respect. Whatever the Puerto Ricans want. I'm happy to abide by that. Whatever Puerto Ricans want, they should get. Obviously, independence is much less viable as a pathway because it, I think, requires tremendous amounts of reparations. And even independence alone is very difficult to push for. But then also reparations, virtually impossible, even though I think that's the just and moral thing to do. Because there's no fucking... honestly... by my estimation, there's no independence without reparations. Like, Puerto Rico deserves reparations beyond independence. Puerto Rico deserves reparations even if it doesn't get independence. Okay? But if that's not the case, or if the people want statehood, then statehood is also perfectly fine. But again, I think more so than statehood or independence, what Puerto Rico deserves, what Puerto Rico should get, is reparations. I'm going to keep saying that. Saying he might be fake is not an assumption. Brother, everyone can be fake. What do you mean? What are you saying? Yes, the reality of the matter is Graham Platner could just as well be a fake, a phony, okay? And totally stab the left in the back. You know who else could do that? Zohran Mamdani, AOC, every other fucking candidate. There's just, that's a likelihood for every candidate. And if you ask some in this chat, they'll say, they are fake. They're phony. I could be fucking fake.
Poverty, I think.
Chatter, you could be fake. One day you could stare at the mirror and realize that someone else is looking back at you, okay? Someone else that you never foresaw you would become.
I think holistically, when we think about gun violence, that's where we're going to get the most reduction.
You said earlier this week that you think Chuck Schumer will back your candidacy if you're the general election official Democratic candidate going into...
By the way, as far as like regretting...
A Supreme Court ruling that could affect the upcoming midterm elections and beyond. The court ruled Louisiana's congressional map with 2 majority black districts is illegal because it relied too much on race to draw those district lines. A lower court had ordered redistricting, arguing the state's 1/3 black population was not properly represented. The Supreme Court decision weakened Section 2 of the landmark 1965 Voting Rights Act and could have a lot of effects on elections this term and in the future. Ed O'Keefe is in Washington to bring us all the details. Ed, good morning.
Major, good to see you. Let's remind folks that the current balance of power shows Republicans with a real thin majority there. Ultimately, 218 seats is what you need to control the House of Representatives. And they're both, the two parties, fighting over where exactly they can.
He wasn't just a Marine, though, man. He was a mercenary. He straight up killed people for money. At least in the military, you can spend your career in IT. He was in infantry. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Okay? It literally, I can't explain this to you enough. It's very difficult for you to comprehend. What matters to you is inconsequential to the voters. Okay? That's it. What matters to you is inconsequential to the voters. As a matter of fact, it's probably positive for many voters. They're like, oh my God, he's a war hero. He actually fought in wars like the ones I watch in the movies, like Black Hawk Down. Okay? That's it. The overwhelming majority of Americans do not have the same assessment of American imperialism as you do. We have to remind ourselves of this reality over and over again, especially when we're talking about electoral performance. Oh my God, I'm losing my mind. It's not about the math of whether or not it's a good campaign. He's running a good campaign. I'm talking about specifically your response to us being suspicious. I'm not denying he's very viable. Yeah, the reason why I'm not as suspicious as you guys are is because I'm listening to what he's saying, and he makes a lot of sense, okay? I'm listening to what he's saying, and I'm telling you that what he's saying makes a lot of sense. I am being reasonable about what he can and can't say as he's currently running for Senate in Maine. Okay, that's number one. And number two, I'm thinking about the overall social conditioning that leads people into taking decisions like this. Growing up in the United States of America, I'm almost certain that you, at some point in time, would not have looked at a candidate like Graham Platner's service, even in Blackwater, and have thought twice about it. You probably would have been like, yeah, no, that's awesome. But after being a 19-month subscriber in this community, a lot of your worldview has probably shifted radically. So now you're thinking with today's terms. What I urge you to always do is think with yesterday's terms to try to develop a better understanding of what leads people to make certain decisions, like joining the military. And then have that experience be so normalized in your life that you go, all right, this is my only viable option for a job. It's not about the morality of it. I'm not endorsing it, okay? I'm saying that it is an immoral act in general from my calculations, but I can also understand how someone would make those decisions, okay? What matters to you is not what matters to the voters. How is this an argument for why people should trust them? What? The reason why I'm saying that is because he's running right now to become the next senator and flip a red seat in Maine. And not only is he doing that, but he's doing that with our values, okay? This is what matters. His campaign has been a disruptive insurgency of left flank values. He is a Bernie-crat. So many of you cannot overcome the initial suspicions that you have that you refuse to listen to what he's saying now. You refuse to understand what Mainers are hearing. And the reason why I keep bringing up the fact that what matters here doesn't matter to the average person in the United States of America is because it's an important lesson to learn so that you don't come across as like a socially maladjusted weirdo when you're having normal conversations in the real world. Okay? It's an important part of being a good organizer. It's an important part of being a good communicator when you're talking to normies. I worry quite a bit about what I'm teaching people in this community when I hear stuff like this all the time. Hasan is awesome. Toxic masculinity, black and white thinking today. See, this is actually a great example of what I'm talking about. Toxic masculinity, black and white thinking. Anyway, let's get to the Supreme Court striking down Louisiana's congressional map, weakening voting.
Pick up seats. So let's go through this. Louisiana is the first place we expect this will happen. The governor is reportedly going to suspend next month's primaries to redraw the map and deal with this specific blue district that stretches all the way from New Orleans out to Shreveport. If they can do that, that's one potential Republican seat. Then go over to Florida, where just yesterday, Republican legislators approved a new map that potentially gives the GOP up to 4 more seats there. They called that special session, anticipating the Supreme Court would rule this way. The other state that may very quickly redraw its map is Mississippi. They've got 4 seats in that state. And that big blue one there is the one that may potentially be up for redrawing. It's where most of the state's African-American voters live. Now that the Supreme Court has ruled that they can tweak the Voting Rights Act, Republicans say they may try to draw there. Other states would like to do this, Major. The problem is the candidate registration deadline has passed. The primary's already been held. So you're looking now to 2028 to see a bunch of other states redraw their maps.
So, hey, Ed, before you go, how do you expect the Democrats to respond to all of this?
Few things. First of all, they're going to file a bunch of lawsuits to try to stop this in those individual states. Second, a bunch of Democrats who said, you want to redraw the maps in those Republican-controlled southern states? Well, introduce you to California, Illinois, New York, Colorado, places like that. You want to redraw there? We've got more seats in those states, and we could potentially redraw those. And the idea now is see these two parties potentially fight over this. And then maybe at some point there's an ultimatum on trying to do this. That requires voters, though, to get upset, call your congressman, your governor, and say, I don't like this. And maybe one day it stops.
All right, to be continued, Ed. Thank you. Always good to see you.
President Trump celebrated after the Supreme Court's decision. Here's that moment.
When did it come out? Just now?
No, it came out this morning, but basically very much narrows the Voting Rights Act.
Was it considered a win for who?
A win for Republicans.
I love it.
CNN's chief data analyst, Harry Enton, running the numbers on this one. Harry, let's kind of baseline it for everyone right now. How is the president doing right now with African-American voters, with black voters, now versus this point in the first term?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing right now in the numbers is President Trump and the Republican Party are chipping away at the long-term advantage that Democrats have had with black voters, with African Americans. You can see it right here. Look, Trump's approval among African Americans at this point in term one, he was at 12%. You know, he's been losing ground with a lot of people. He's gaining ground with African Americans. He's up to 16% at this point. And you say, this isn't that big of a shift. But I will tell you, Republicans absolutely love this shift that's going on because Democrats have had such a long-term advantage. The fact that he's actually gaining ground versus where he was in term number one, this has major implications for elections down the line because Democrats, especially in a lot of these tight races, you talk about places like Georgia, right down in the South, you see this type of movement for Trump actually gaining ground. This could have major ramifications and could help put Republicans over the top in a number of southern places in the midterm elections.
But do you see this as part of a bigger trend?
I see this as absolutely part of a bigger trend. Donald Trump's Republican Party is absolutely gaining ground, not just him gaining in terms of his approval rating, but look at the party ID margin, Kate, because this to me was absolutely stunning. Look at this party ID margin among African Americans. At number one, Democrats had a 63-point advantage. That is absolutely fallen. Look at where it is now. A double-digit shift away. Democrats, of course, still have the advantage, but it's a 12-point shift to the Republican Party. And I look back through Gallup's records. They sent me their records. And this, in fact, lead that Democrats have is actually smaller than any lead from 2006 to 2021. So Democrats are leading. But again, we're talking about chipping away. Republicans are chipping away at this long-term advantage that Democrats have had among African Americans. We see it in terms of Trump's approval rating, and we even see it to a wider degree among the party ID margin, where all of a sudden there are a number of African Americans who are walking away from the Democrats.
Yeah, I don't believe it. But it would be pretty crazy if the Democratic Party used the older black voting bloc as some of the most like conservative, some of the most like centrist candidacy enjoyers for years and years, only to have them turn around and be like, okay, we're Republican now, which is not going to happen, for the record. I don't think it's correct. This kind of shit happens all the time, okay? Specifically about the black voting, the black voting bloc, which they always inevitably turn around and say, oh, we were wrong, I guess. Like 1 point distinction, any sort of marginal swing in the direction in the direction away from the Republican Party, oftentimes is seen as this like major, alarm bell. And then black voters are, of course, as always, the most reliable Democratic Party voters in general. I've talked about this extensively with the Kamala Harris campaign, if you remember.
Party, and a number of them who are walking into the Republican tent.
That is very interesting, looking at that past Gallup information.
Yeah.
What does this mean for the race for control in Congress?
Okay, so you see this right here. You see this 51-point advantage that Democrats have, significantly less than you see that 63-point advantage. And what we will note was back in 2024, right, Donald Trump put in a historically strong performance among African Americans. Democrats performed the worst in a generation. Have they gained any of that coalition back from where they fell down to in 2024? But take a look here. Okay, choice for election among African Americans. Kamala Harris was leading amongst that group in the pre-election polling by 63 points. Are Democrats gaining back any of that ground? It's a 62-point advantage now. Republicans are holding on to the gains that they made among African Americans in 2024. Republicans are gaining among African Americans. They are chipping away at that long-term advantage. The Donald Trump-led Republican Party is making gains among African Americans that we simply put have not seen the Republican Party make in a generation.
Fascinating. Good to see you here. Thanks
Nice
so
to
much
see
for
you,
putting
Kate.
it together.
6 justices all but threw away the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Now, they left the words on the paper, but they erased the meaning. The way poll taxes and literacy tests and jelly bean counting tried to negate the 15th Amendment that gave black people the right to vote. Why? Because voting is the single most important power in a democracy. Not just the act of going to the polls and filling in some bubbles. No, it's the ability to vote for your candidate of choice. Now, you are not entitled to vote for the winner. But gerrymandering districts can mean that your power is so watered down that you never even had a chance to choose who represents you or pretends to. Enter Louisiana. The court struck down its map today, saying that lawmakers illegally used race to draw a majority black district. At the heart of the ruling was Section 2 of the Civil Rights Act that LBJ signed. And before I explain Section 2, why don't you listen to what LBJ said when he signed it into law?
Millions of Americans are denied the right to vote because of their color. This law will ensure them the right to vote. The wrong is one which no American in his heart can justify.
Ensure them the right to vote. Section 2, it tried to prevent racial gerrymandering, precisely because it diluted voting power. And that's now all but out the window. And already today, we saw Republican candidates across Alabama and Georgia.
All right, chat. We're gonna get ready to move out right now. We're gonna go link up with Chris Rabb, who just got the DSA endorsement, AOC endorsement, and the like. But I'll keep playing these videos for you guys as we head over to our next destination. Get very excited. It's going to be a fun day, okay?
In South Carolina and others